Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was born in Highschool of the Dead. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Time of Rapture and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Pilot. Disclaimer: I don't own Naruto or Highschool of the Dead falling. The sense of the wind rushing through your hair. The cold breeze grazing across your skin. The panic you feel when one realizes that they are falling, likely to their death from an extremely high place. The conscious thought in a person's mind yelling at them, telling them that they are falling and they are going to die. The effect is oftentimes a detrimental horror in its own right. The subconscious thought of oneself knowing that they are going to die sends their entire body into a severe panic attack that proceeds further into a heart attack as they plummet to the hard ground below, often dead before the impact. None of that was what Uzumaki Naruto felt as he dived through the sky with his eyes calm and focused. All of his senses were virtually blocked out as he slowly watched the ground approaching closer and closer. The only sound he heard was his steady heartbeat. A heartbeat that summed up the situation for the falling shinobi up into one simple fact. He had done this before. It was during this time suspended in the air that the 17-year-old shinobi was able to reflect on his life. The slightest frown grazed the young shinobi's features as he thought to himself how his life turned out. He thought to himself that perhaps if he had lived a different life, things would have ended up differently. Maybe if he grew up in his life playing the fool, acting the idiot. Maybe when he officially made it onto the legendary Team 7 Genin team, things would have turned out differently. Perhaps he wouldn't have passed the Chunin exams his first time around. Perhaps he wouldn't have been able to save the old man, the third Hokage. Perhaps he wouldn't have surpassed Sasuke so effortlessly in the shinobi arts. Perhaps he wouldn't have turned down Jiraiya's offer to be his apprentice. Perhaps he wouldn't have joined Anbu shortly after becoming a Chunin. Perhaps he wouldn't have been offered Pain's eyes to carry on his dream. Perhaps he wouldn't have found Konan to become his most loyal and faithful partner. A sudden grimace graced the warrior's features as he grew closer to the planet's surface as a stray but disappointing thought passed through his mind. Perhaps he began dryly in his mind as he closed his eyes, blocking out the world around him. If I hadn't done all of those things, I may have been able to stop the Shinobi World War. The blonde-haired shinobi suddenly spun in mid-air before a loud crash sounded across his landing zone. A giant crater formed in the ground as the short grass surrounding the field he was on literally rippled from the impact as the ground began to break apart into a fissure, ever so slightly. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki stood up slowly from the crater he formed before calmly dusting off his black mix of standard shinobi and ANB gear before looking out carefully to where he exactly was with the thought being voiced. And perhaps I wouldn't have fallen for the masked man's trap, Naruto thought dryly as he drew a kunai and began walking to the building that stood before him. Earlier that day, a young teenage boy unlike another was quite well grounded as he leaned on the railing of a staircase in his school, overlooking the school courtyard, but more importantly the gate. The gate of a school to many students was a symbol for many things, besides the most obvious, which was the school. Perhaps most importantly to many, it was a symbol for safety. A place parents could reliably send their children for the day, and they would know they could rest easy as they went off to their various jobs. However, for Komuro Takashi, a symbol for safety was anything but what he felt the gate was. Takashi stared off into the distance at the gate coldly as he recalled upon memories of the past. His mind wandering more to the fact that the gate before him was his freedom when it was open, and his prison when it was closed. This wasn't to say Takashi was one to follow the rules, and not find a way around the gate if he wished to, but it was the symbol that mattered to him. These days he had taken to skipping classes entirely. Well, most of them anyways. He shared far too many with his childhood friend Ray. Now for most people that may be a dream come true, sharing a class with their childhood friend that had grown to become quite the attractive woman. However, there was one key fact that completely ruined any time they could share together. His childhood friend that he had made a pinky promise to become married with had went on to date his best guy friend. To say the relationship between the three of them was in shambles would be an understatement. They were capable of acting civil around one another, of course. However, beyond acting civil, the three of them rarely ever talked. Pinky promised, the young man said in a sing-song voice as he overlooked the school courtyard from the railing he leaned against. If you lie, I'll make you swallow 1,000 needles. He barely noticed the pink-haired school genius come up beside him and call him an idiot. Takagi? The boy questioned in mild surprise. The pink-haired female rolled her eyes in annoyance as she moved closer to the delinquent teen. Every time you have to face something you don't like, you always escape to the same place. That's so elementary. So that's what they call it these days? Escaping things I don't like? And here I thought it was simply cutting. He mused to himself, no longer looking towards the pink-haired arrival. Not funny, the light brown-eyed female said in annoyance. The first semester just started, and you have skipped nearly every class. At this rate, you might as well get your things together for the supplementary classes. It wasn't long after that when the pink-haired girl dubbed Takashi began to rant on about how stupid her friend was. Something the boy had long since learned to tune out as he leaned against the railing. Although one comment pierced through his practiced ignorance. "What's your deal?" the pink-haired girl mumbled, her previous fire in her voice fading. "Just because you got dumped by your childhood friend? That's stupid." She finished coldly before walking off with a frown on her face. Takashi resisted the urge to flinch at that. However, in the next few moments he would find that chaos would erupt at the gates of the school, and his past troubles would be the least of his worries. Naruto grit his teeth as he walked through whatever complex this was. He could only assume it was some form of school given the layout and the fact that there were so many teenagers walking around. But his patience was wearing thin as he walked through the large school with multiple floors. First off would be in regards to the school. At first glance from the outside, it may appear perfectly normal. But on the inside it could only be described as death and pestilence. The mindless drones, former shells of people walking around, only served to really bring him back to a world or dimension he had just left behind. Naruto knew ever since he had joined Umbu shortly after being promoted to the rank of Chunin that dangerous things were on the horizon. The old man had opted to tell Naruto about his parents the moment he achieved the rank of Chunin. And if he was perfectly honest, he didn't entirely know how he felt about the situation. Both of his parents died the night of the Kyuubi attack, that was simply the facts. But for Naruto it didn't shake the reality that one of his parents didn't have to die that night. Sarutobi Hiruzen had given Naruto full access to the mission report he had filled out himself that night. Naruto could tell just in the man's eyes that the aged leader was gravely sorry due to holding back information from Naruto. But as Naruto grew older, and proceeded into the more taxing areas of the shinobi profession, he realized that he likely wouldn't have lived past the age of 5 if it weren't for the old man's personal interference with his lineage. The documents he had gained access to were simple, yet revealing. Both of his parents died that night sealing the Kyuubi. But one of them could have lived. Whether it be if his mother just opted to sit down and let his father handle the tailed beast, and make him the next Jinchuriki for Konoha. Or if his father had just allowed his mother to take a hero's death, and take the 9-tailed demon with her. Instead they opted for some ridiculous middle ground where they both ended up dying, and Naruto grew up in poverty alone. To say that irked Naruto a great deal would be an understatement. The fact that the third Hokage repeatedly told him how much they had loved him was the only thing that kept him from pissing on their graves. For a boy growing up with no family whatsoever? The closest thing he had to family connections were to the old man and the owners of the local ramen shack. To say he had learned to put the values of family and friendship over everything else would be an understatement. It was when he came to this realization as he stood face to face with the Rinnegan user that he realized that his dream to become Hokage was no longer a dream he desired. His dream was to protect the people he held closest to him, the people that acknowledged him. That was all it had ever been. The title of Hokage was just a convenient place of power that would have given him those things. He promised himself that he would never become like his father. A man that had chosen others over his family, his loved ones. At least in Naruto's eyes. That was a man he could never grow to respect. He may have been an excellent shinobi, but that means nothing when being judged by the eyes of a son. It was probably for the very same reason he simply couldn't stand being in his godfather's presence. Naruto shook his head free of his thoughts as he flipped the kunai in his hand as he had been absent-mindedly walking down the hallway filled with the walking dead. They may have been strong in contrast to the young civilians walking down the halls. But to a shinobi, to say they were a threat would be laughable. Naruto had gone through war, a war that was still going on, and he had survived. He had fought some of the trickiest and toughest opponents in the history of the shinobi world. Opponents from Hanzo the Salamander to Nagato's resurrected form in his prime. To even reference these walking dead as a challenge with their predictable sluggish and lunging movements. That was probably an insult of the highest accord. Naruto had seen animals with more intelligence than what stood before him. It was due to that he could simply walk down the hall, kunai in hand, plunging it into the skull of the dead walking by effortlessly. If he had a choice he knew he would have done most destructive means of clearing out the dead. Naruto held back a sneer as he rubbed a lightly glowing metal shackle on his wrist. He resisted the urge to roll his eyes as he focused on the shackle while sidestepping an unintelligent lunge from the festering corpse that caused him to bump into the hallway window, nose first. Supposedly indestructible metal combined with chakra-absorbing and suppressing qualities found from technology of the hidden snow village. How he had allowed the masked man to get the jump on him, and slip this atrocity on his wrist was beyond him. But Naruto knew in his head that he would get the blasted thing off. Everything has a weakness. It was a lesson he had learned and taught throughout his shinobi career. The weakness just needed to be found. Naruto was broken from his thoughts as the moment he kicked open the double doors before him leading onto a long overhang, he heard the most horrible scream. He hadn't heard anything so terrified since Pain's destruction of Konoha and its civilians. Across the way he saw a pink-haired girl with a short, chubbier boy with glasses. But he could tell they weren't the source of the screams due to the boy's almost horrified gaze as he looked over to where the bridge split into AT. A number of students that had been formerly trying to get into a room for safety found the place to be anything but. Two of the Walking Dead burst forth from the doors, the one in the front viciously grabbing one of the 4 male students by the face, tackling him to the ground, giving him a thoroughly disgusting kiss on the neck. That sight was all it took for the pink-haired female to rush across the overhang, leading the chubby boy closely behind her. They seemed to be on a mission as they ran right up to the blonde shinobi with a bloody kunai in his grip. Naruto's gaze, however, remained on the group of teenagers being slaughtered. And it was at that point he had to ask himself, when did I become so desensitized to death? The memory hit the shinobi like a ton of bricks. Naruto, a young chunin that recently was selected to join the Umbu division, was currently sitting next to his purple-haired comrade in a tall tree overlooking a large camp. How can they ask us to kill all of these people, Yugao-chan? A young 13-year-old asked with his mask clipped to his mask. A mask that he had specially tailored to remind him of the boy who spared his life in Wave Country. How many times must I remind you to wear your mask, Uzumaki-san? The young woman asked back in an almost teasing tone. A grave contrast to what the situation before them was asking the two of them to do. Naruto grumbled a bit as he adjusted the mask onto his face, waiting for certain seals on the mask to adjust and return to him his vision. There, I'm wearing my mask, your turn, he said stubbornly as he looked over a camp filled with over a good couple hundred bandits. It reminded him of the battle at the bridge all over again. The purple-haired woman frowned behind her mask as she mulled over how to respond. Naruto, you are going to learn as you grow older that in our line of work, people die. Sometimes for the right reasons, and sometimes for the wrong reasons. Our job is to protect the people of Konoha. Sometimes that means saving the lives of several people. And sometimes that means executing dangerous people. Both ways help. Naruto and his partner sat in that tree for a good few moments in silence as Naruto let what his teacher said sink in. But is it the right thing to do? The woman stood up as she overlooked the men and few women gathered around scattered campfires in the area. I don't know if it is the right thing, Naruto. All I know is the wrong thing is standing by doing nothing while innocents die. Naruto snapped back to reality as the gravity of the world came crashing back down around him. Hey you! Are you stupid or something? Come on, we need to move. Quit standing around, yelled the pink-haired girl as she came running at Naruto. It was only when she reached the young blonde that she was actually frustrated. He hadn't moved an inch. Naruto shook his head free of his thoughts as he looked over to the group still being attacked by the 2 corpses. He turned to the pink-haired girl standing in front of him before he spun his kunai around in his hand and offered the young girl the handle. Here, take it. He mumbled as he all but dropped the knife into the girl's surprised hand. Hey! Come back! We need to get out of here! She yelled to the blonde with wide eyes as he rushed past her at quite incredible speeds. Although in her mind, if he was going to rush off to die, that was on him. She already had enough stupidity with Takashi for the day. And with that thought, she turned around and ran, knife in hand. Naruto rushed across the platform. His eyes had shifted from a calm blue sea to dark intense waters in an instant. The eyes of a battle-hardened killer. Something that a 17-year-old should not have. He was already beating himself up on the inside. Truthfully, he knew that if he was anything like his past self, he wouldn't have hesitated in the slightest with saving the unlucky students. And now here he was, forced to watch as the 2 girls in the group were being attacked by the now 6 walking monstrosities. Although Naruto wouldn't admit it as he ran across the way, drawing a kunai. One of the girls had certainly gained his respect. She stood in a well-refined martial arts stance. Which stance to be exact? He couldn't tell. Perhaps it was karate. He never particularly bothered with knowing which stance which martial art originally started in. Shinobi simply used taijutsu, which in truth was just a generic term for them to describe mixed martial arts. Shinobi never truly wanted others to know what they were actually capable of. She was swift on her feet, delivering well-placed kicks and punches, all the while effectively gaining distance. He had the underlying feeling that if the girl was alone, she actually would have been able to handle herself just fine. However, the platinum blonde-haired martial arts girl was no doubt protecting a younger sister. The other girl had fallen to the ground in fear, clutching at her chest as faint tears began to roll down her face. Her breasts were shallow, and her eyes unfocused. Naruto leapt into action against the attacking dead with quite precise stabs that went completely unnoticed. But by the time he arrived, it was too late for the young fighter. The platinum blonde who had spent her entire last moments just now protecting the younger girl that could have been her twin if only slightly older. One of the dead had spun its head after getting a vicious punch, and had taken to biting the hand that had punched it. Naruto grimaced at the recent memory of how many teenagers he had passed up on helping only to see them suffer this fate. He silently wished he had reached this desire to help sooner. Naruto finished his last couple kills as the dead dropped to the ground once again. The blonde-haired fighter had since fallen back onto her butt and wrapped an arm around the shell-shocked girl beside her, while looking up to the shinobi. "Thanks for coming to the rescue. I was almost afraid you wouldn't when I saw you watching us over there." She gestured with a nod of the head to where he was standing not even a minute ago. Naruto grimaced as the truth set in that he could have in fact been at her side in less than a few seconds if he really need to, even without chakra. "Yeah, but I obviously wasn't fast enough," he said with a bitter taste in his mouth, slightly angry at his own personal failure. To his surprise, however, he was only greeted with a smile. "It's the thought that counts. My father says that you can judge the character of a person by the way they treat those that can do nothing for them." The thought of Pain reviving everyone he had killed in Konoha on his deathbed instantly came to mind for Naruto. With a weak smile, Naruto simply nodded his head, "Smart man." The light laughter the blonde girl gave despite the situation around him brought a smile to Naruto's face. In truth, she almost reminded him of himself when he was younger. A bit eccentric though, she added on at the end with a grin. She offered her free hand, which wasn't bloody. "Kimiko Sinja. This is my younger sister Aing." Naruto looked to the side to glance at the still shell-shocked Aing. He didn't have nearly as much respect for the girl as he held for Kimiko. He gave a slow nod of the head for recognition, but said nothing to acknowledge the girl beyond that. "Uzumaki Naruto," he replied calmly, doing his best to hide his guilt. "Nice eyes," she said before heaving forward with a nasty cough. Naruto shook his head slightly at the laid-back mannerisms of the dying girl before him. "Nice hair." He bit back in amusement. "Wish I had my mom's." She gave a toothy grin, but her teeth were already getting coated in her own blood, which in turn caused Naruto to frown. They stared at each other for a few moments before Kimiko spoke. "Do me a favor, Naruto. Look after my sister for me. She suffers from anxiety due to something she saw something happen to our father when she was younger. She just needs her meds from the nurse's office. I know you can help her. I haven't seen anyone move like you do in a fight except for that purple-haired crazy Siko." With a hacking cough, Kimiko continued, "I'd do it myself, but I'm afraid I'm going to be pretty indisposed in a minute or so, Blondie." Naruto's grin faded as this weight suddenly got put on his shoulders. He looked over towards Ain, whom was finally becoming a bit more responsive. It was at this moment that he truly wished that the two girls didn't look to be nearly twins. The guilt he was feeling beginning to rest on his shoulders was awful. He squeezed his eyes shut before he carefully scooped the girl up into his arms. He dropped his kunai to the ground next to the older sister, who in turn gave a big grin to the shinobi before. "If you want to," he left the message hanging in the air, but the older sister gave a bark of a laugh not even a second later as she picked up the kunai knife. "What? Go out like a coward? Ha!" she said as she pushed herself up onto shaky legs. "If I'm gonna die, I'ma die helping the people still alive," she answered in a confident tone. Seeing Naruto not leaving as he continued to stare at the platinum blonde in a deal of respect, the act only caused the young woman to blush under his gaze. "Well, get going before I bite you," she said, a joke in poor taste. Naruto shook his head in a sigh and stood up onto the stone wall of walkway, ready to simply jump down to the next level. "Find our little brother Ian," was the last fading sound he heard from Kimiko as he jumped off the side of the walkway, only feeling the slightest shifting of a nodding head in his arms. Now that this chapter is done, time to lay some things out. Alright, well, this is chapter 1. I didn't know how I would go about splitting up the chapters. I have been frankly writing this story for a bit, and I am probably about 60,000 words into the story. Right now I am just deciding to post it, and I'm figuring out how I want to go about splitting the chapters up. Normally I am a person that usually posts longer chapters. However, for this story I think I will actually be opting to shorter chapters this time around, given how the story translates from the manga. This story is going to be quite a bit more in-depth and detailed than the actual series. A lot more ripples will form as well in this story, in contrast to how Naruto's presence usually affects this universe. Some characters will be expanded on, some characters will survive things they normally wouldn't. There will be OCs. Frankly, there will be a lot that frankly just isn't in your typical Highschool of the Dead cut and dry crossover plotline. Another thing I felt when I started writing the story. The typical Naruto simply can't, and I do mean that with all caps. He can't fit into the Highschool of the Dead universe in his standard implementation. The reason for this is pretty simple. Naruto is pretty much a hardcore paragon, a hero of heroes. He will not only go above and beyond the call of duty for his friends, but he is even willing to do that for his enemies. So the idea that Naruto would go into the story, and then not make 1,000 shadow clones in order to save not just the core group, but everyone in Japan, well, that idea is silly. That is exactly what he would try and do. So before I was able to start the story with Naruto, I needed to craft a Naruto that was still his typical Jinchuriki, born and raised in Konoha while at the same time obtaining a different mindset. So the Naruto in this story, without giving too many spoilers, is inspired by another story a bit. Potential realized a story where the Sandaime lives and promotes Naruto to the rank of Chunin, and Naruto begins to take his shinobi career seriously. I took this concept and gave it my own spin to make a Naruto that wouldn't utterly try and walk over and wipe out the entire zombie invasion. But at the same time he would be willing to protect those close to him as he ventures through this world. Chapter 2: Unnecessary Deeds. Disclaimer: I don't own Naruto or Highschool of the Dead. A ear-piercing scream ripped through several levels of the school from the lungs of a young pink-haired genius. "Hi Hirano," she said in a panic, backpedaling from the hostile figure that was able to sneak up on her. "The magazine is empty," he said quickly as he experimentally pulled the trigger to his makeshift gun a couple times while aiming at the creature. No, get away," she said in a panic as she backed up into a broken trophy case. "Get away," she yelled as her foe approached closer step by step. She reached behind her and grabbed the closest trophy she could find to hurl at the dead student. But it was then in her panic that she realized that she still had yet to let go of the kunai knife she had been given earlier. The moment Hirano had created his gun contraption, she hadn't needed to worry about it. She quickly took the knife in hand and reared back her arm. Then with the accuracy of a textbook genius she threw the blade and naturally missed. The blade sailed right over the monster's head and embedded itself into a far wall across from her. Tears swelled up in her eyes as what she felt was her last-ditch effort had completely and utterly failed. "Don't come," she muttered. "Don't come." She clenched her eyes shut as the monster fell into striking distance, and she screamed once again. "Don't come!" A quick rush of air, and the pink-haired girl opening her eyes revealed none other than Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, with a rather bored expression, and a girl in his arms, had calmly come up behind the dead student and swept his leg quickly, all the while keeping perfect balance with the girl in his arms. The dead student proceeded to take a spill as it fell backwards, only to come in full contact with the very same foot, crushing his skull into the ground. The dead student surely returned to the grave after that. It was only through luck that the skull didn't outright crush under the shinobi's feet, causing the surrounding students to outright lose their lunch. Naruto gave a sigh as he gave a shake of his foot before he knelt down next to the pink-haired girl and set Ayin down gently against the trophy case, being mindful of broken glass. He knew there were a few more of the dead he had to assist the chubby boy, supposedly named Hirano or something. Although Naruto raised an eyebrow not a moment later as the repetitive sound of running footsteps approached closer and closer until in the hallway stood 4 people. 3 students and a teacher or some sort. Naruto's eyebrow raised further as he spotted the 2 younger females of the group actually holding their choice of weapons in respectable stances. The purple-haired female more so than the light-haired girl. Although that may be more due to one fighting with a broomstick and the other with a worn wooden sword. However, even though there were new arrivals, Naruto knew that he had a job he needed to do. And no one was moving into action quick enough. At least by his own battle-hardened shinobi standards. Truthfully, they probably hadn't been standing there for more than a couple seconds. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose as he moved to stand up, drawing a kunai knife from his pocket. However, this process only served to have the platinum blonde clutch onto the young man's fleeting arm tightly. "Don't go," she mumbled, short breaths still affecting her. While her attack may have passed, it was quite obvious that she was still feeling the negative effects of it after the fact. Naruto rolled his eyes briefly before flicking his free hand into palm. The action was frankly subtle. But the effect of an invisible force slamming into the closest dead student on the right, rocketing him into the far wall without notice. His skull immediately crushed upon impact. They weren't shinobi, and there were few shinobi that could survive that technique in the first place. Naruto noticed that while surprise shone on the civilians' faces, they all knew there was no time to stand and gawk. "I'll take the right. Ray. I'll get the left." All 3 of the young students yelled virtually simultaneously. Naruto had to admit that it was quite impressive to see in contrast to the amount of students that had died to this outbreak, disease, plague, whatever it was. Naruto could completely understand how civilians fell to the mindless drones before him getting slaughtered by the 3 students. They were after all once friends of other students in the school. Teachers that some had grown fond of. He was sure that there were even a few that had lost their lovers to this epidemic. However, a lot of the respect he could muster was utterly drowned out when he realized if something like this ever happened when he was in the academy, a single genin or academy student could probably clean out an entire school of this size. That is, as long as the young shinobi was careful. Naruto shook his head and forcefully peeled himself away from Ayin despite her weak protests. He stood up and walked to the far wall, leaving the 2 girls on the floor in shock. He frowned as he grabbed the kunai that had been poorly thrown and stuck into a wall. Naruto grabbed the ninja tool and turned before throwing it at the pink-haired girl's feet, sticking it into the tile floor. "Don't throw this again, you don't have proper training. Just stab them in the head if they get close, preferably the eyes." Naruto glanced over the new arrivals before letting his gaze fall on Ayin as he spoke out. "Does anyone know how I can find the school doctor or nurse or whatever this place has?" Naruto asked in a bit of annoyance. He didn't mind looking after the platinum blonde as per past agreement. However, he did wish that she could at least walk on her own 2 feet. The purple-haired female gave a long appraising look as she looked over the blonde shinobi before speaking. "I'm surprised you don't know the school doctor," she said with a bit of apprehension in her voice as she glanced toward the kunai knife that was now pierced into the ground in front of the pink-haired student. "Dr. Marikawa is right here," she said, gesturing to the busted blonde-haired woman. "My name is Busujima Siko from Class 3A. That seemed to get introductions rolling for everyone else as the brown-haired teen with the baseball bat finished locking the glass door. "Komuro Takashi from Class 2B, he said with a level head. The female that followed was a great deal more cheerful than him. "Miss Busujima, I remember you won the national championship last year. I'm Miyamoto Rei, a member of the Spear Martial Arts Club," the young girl said with a charming smile and voice. Frankly, Naruto found it a bit surprising she could even have it in her to hurt anyone from first glance. She seemed far too innocent as far as Naruto was concerned. The last formal introduction was barely that as the young chubby boy that Naruto simply knew as Hirano gave his briefly stuttered introduction, to Hirano Koda from Class B. Naruto didn't really want to seem rude and not give his own introduction, but he simply tuned them out and stopped caring. The only one of even remote interest to him out of the students was the young purple-haired female. And that was just due to Kimiko's earlier comment. "I know you can help her. I haven't seen anyone move like you do in a fight except for that purple-haired crazy Siko." Naruto was more interested in as to why he seemingly always got saddled with big-breasted blonde doctors. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said simply as he moved past the few gathered students to the female doctor in the corner, ignoring the now dubbed Takagi Saya's outburst. "Dr. Marikawa?" Naruto questioned as he stood before the blonde doctor. He could already tell that the woman was rather aloof as she simply watched from the sidelines, a soft expression adopting her features as she watched Saya break down into Siko's arms. An expression mirrored by many in the room. At least those that actually cared. He knew the situation the students were in was stressful, but in contrast to having to fight the salamander Hanzo without actually breathing the majority of the fight, this situation could be considered a vacation as far as he was concerned. She sounded off, turning her head to the blonde at being addressed. "Yes, what is it?" Naruto resisted the urge to sigh. It appeared the woman's attention was barely even being held by the scene playing out before her. "Do you happen to have any medication for anxiety attacks?" Naruto asked in a professional tone he would use as an ANBU when needing to question civilians. She had one not long ago, and is still not effectively recovered from it. "Oh, Shinja-san," the woman said in surprise, looking over to Aing. She then started to rummage through her bag, making random sounds as she searched. Irma. She finished much to Naruto's amusement by pulling out a small bottle of pills. Although from the sound they made, he could tell it didn't sound very full. It was at that time when the doctor made her way over to Ain that Naruto finally took a deep breath and looked down to his effective prison on his wrist. The smallest of hairline fractures began so slowly mend themselves together from the previous minor use of chakra he had partaken in moments before. Naruto didn't even bother to hide the scowl that appeared on his face at the ridiculous idea of potentially sentient metal. "My pills," was the faint whisper Naruto heard from Ain as the dutiful blonde doctor practically bounced her way over to the injured student. While Siko held on to the now crumbled Saya in her arms, she turned her interest to the blonde. "Uzumaki-san," Siko spoke, gathering full attention of everyone in the room except for Shizuka, whom was busy getting Ain to take her pill in her state without water. "I don't believe you stated your classroom, nor school year. You also do not wear the school uniform," Siko merely observed, but his observations quickly allowed for an unasked question to form amongst the group. "And finally, you carry weapons that, well, I never thought I would actually ever see in person." The frown that marred her face seemed to trouble everyone around her as they now stared at the blonde enigma. Naruto pursed his lips, weighing the worth of even giving a straight answer to them. He had climbed the shinobi ladder, and quite quickly by most normal standards, with the few exceptions of genius like Uchiha Itachi or Hatake Kakashi. One of the things you learned quickly on the way to the top, as he liked to reference it, was that information was everything in his line of work. From information on landscape to information on the opponents he faced in battle. You could never know too much in his line of work. "My name you already know, I'm not from around here and I don't go to this school," he said in a cool and collected voice. Although there were brief pauses as he thought through which information he thought was even worth giving in his situation. "I was merely passing through. As for my weapons, I'm surprised you know about them," Naruto finished, as he flashed a kunai, all the while avoiding answering the question asked about them. Saya had since pushed herself out of Siko's grasp, and gave a scoff. Only an idiot would come to a place like this given the situation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as the heat was consumed by tension. That was probably not the best thing to say to a person whom seemingly carried around weapons of rare origin on a whim. Not to mention the said soldier's complete and utter lack of tolerance with the word idiot being thrown around. He had been called that far too much in his childhood to even begin to tolerate being called an idiot at the age and skill he had achieved now. Although he retained his cool in this situation and merely replied, just as only an idiot would attempt to throw a close-quarters weapon they have no training in. His comment had turned into a biting one by the end of it, his annoyance clear as day on his features. The pink-haired female visibly flinched at her own insult being used against her. It cut a great deal deeper after she had just spout off about being a genius only to see how worse for where she truly looked. There was a few brief moments of silence before Takashi spoke. Hey, he said slowly with a somber expression still on his face after Saya's initial meltdown. If we are all going to just decide to rest right now, there is a room just over there that we can barricade us in. It would probably be safer since we won't have to deal with those things. The now loosely formed group seemed to consent to this. Naruto rested his head on his hand as he propped his elbow up on the table. He was silently looking over the younger Shinja's sister with a bored expression. The girl had regained most of her ability having taken the pills. All it took was a water bottle, and a bit of hand fanning as she seemingly calmed down. However, Naruto knew that as the girl calmed down, the weight of what had happened with her sister would only serve to crash down on her. She had remained silent the entire time the room had broken out into various discussions about their situation. In fact, the only time Naruto realized that she was not in fact simply mute was when she gave him a polite thank you for saving me, yet beyond that, all Naruto could do was observe. And to say he was glad he took the time to observe would be an understatement. It didn't take very long for Naruto to realize at all that he was in a world seemingly without the use of chakra. That much he could have figured out if he was still 12 years old, and a freshly turned genin. Given his experience over the years and add that to his rippled eyes he gained from his fallen foe, finding out he was in a chakraless society was simple. In the words of his former ANBU captain whom could smell danger, well, he essentially felt that was about this different world, or whatever he was in that was chakraless. So that was why the girl sitting beside him in his opinion was a complete and utter anomaly. Naruto fought the urge to correct himself in his head as he subconsciously admitted he knew that the potential for chakra still existed. Where he came from the idea of chakra was that it innately flowed through every living being. Shinobi were simply living beings that had taken to learning how to grow and master the use of their chakra. As such, in civilians, chakra was pretty much non-existent. So perhaps it wasn't that the world he was in was chakraless, it was simply that shinobi were absent from it. Although this did not explain the chunin-level chakra reserves he felt coming from the girl that sat beside him, cradling her water bottle in her hands while lost in thought. She didn't appear to have even the slightest bit of knowledge of her chakra. Otherwise, he was sure she would be attempting to channel it to calm her nerves. It was one of the many reasons shinobi simply didn't suffer from anxiety attacks. Naruto mulled over a textbook definition the blue-haired former Akatsuki had given him while tending to the people of her village medically. Naruto, anxiety attacks are often spontaneous. They are spawned by the body essentially being pumped full of adrenaline as if they were in serious danger. However, oftentimes during an anxiety attack, there is no actual danger being present. So you simply have your body go into overdrive for no actual logical reason, and you start to panic. Naruto grinned slightly at how knowledgeable Konan was about virtually anything. After having a bit of a history lesson from her one day, he learned that a boy named Yahiko was the soul and spirit of her trio of friends. He later went on to be the figurehead for the Akatsuki. Meanwhile, Nagato always was the muscle behind the group, perhaps the slightly shy and lacking confidence kind growing up, but the muscle nonetheless. Then there was Konan, the young girl that grew up holding everything together with vast knowledge and details. It was almost funny how often that role was delegated to the female of a group in shinobi history. Naruto continued to stare at the young female whom was lost in her own world as he continued to recall on his past conversation. But Konan, if that's the case, then why don't shinobi have panic attacks more often? Even in the and out of the field, you never hear about them? Konan pursed her lips before she had taken to gently moving her lip piercing as she rolled her tongue. Under other circumstances, the 15-year-old Uzumaki was sure he would have found it the slightest bit erotic if not for the simple fact that piercings in general were so exotic and rare in the shinobi profession. Konan ran her tongue over her lips one last time. It was likely just a routine she simply did when she was thinking. She was apparently completely oblivious as to how utterly distracting it was. But then again, considering she was likely always at Nagato's side, and he was essentially her brother. Naruto highly doubted any of the AIM shinobi were even willing to think about touching the woman with a 10-foot pole. Well, shinobi are soldiers and live their lives in combat, so the idea of anxiety is frankly fairly frequent since combat in our profession is just to be expected. But in addition to that, bits and pieces of medical research has shown chakra to be a bit of a passive tranquilizer almost for the body to keep the nerves steady. You see, Naruto, people, and this is my shinobi included, seem to often boast about receiving a rush of adrenaline in combat. They often talk about how everything slows down, and how in those few moments their opponent didn't have a chance. Well, simply put, they're wrong. Everything doesn't slow down, it's really the opposite. Everything in fact speeds up, and your body starts going into overdrive. And if you aren't careful, your body speeding up and you not being prepared for it can consume you in the middle of combat. But again, shinobi don't really have these problems. Conan paused briefly as she was thinking over her words in the discussion with the one Nagato had passed his legacy onto. As I said before, chakra acts almost like a passive tranquilizer. It will still speed you up, you could say, if you got a huge rush of adrenaline. But it would simply not allow for the huge downsides of someone not being able to keep up with it. This may simply be due to, and this is my personal opinion, Naruto, that as shinobi grows stronger and more capable, the effects adrenaline have on them are simply dulled by the training, experience, and skill they receive. To say the young girl sitting next to him with virtually untapped Chunin-level chakra pools suffering from anxiety attacks was an anomaly. That would be an understatement. He had no idea how he should approach the situation. The limited amount of medical knowledge he learned was simply how to mend wounds for comrades in the field. One of his many different field captains at the time felt it should be mandatory for a walking chakra battery like himself to at least be a walking medical chakra battery. Uzumaki-san, it looks like everyone is out of breath, but why aren't you helping Komuro-san and Hirano-san with the barricade? The purple-haired sword mistress asked while rolling her shoulders. Naruto rolled his eyes at that. He thought he had already explained why he felt that was a dumb idea. Perhaps I only thought it over in my head, he thought in his own amusement. He had taken to doing that quite a bit as he grew higher in the ranks of the joint shinobi armed forces. Is there a reason I should help them? He asked, a raised eyebrow cocked towards the senior student. Is there a reason you're not helping them for that matter? Naruto added on as an afterthought, realizing he was being judged. Siko looked taken aback for a moment as she stared directly into Naruto's eyes and proceeded to take in his body language. His eyes were calm and collected, if not the slightest bit distant. Yet more importantly to be noted, she felt, was his body language. There was no visible tension at all in his relaxed posture as he rested with a rather bored expression. It was as if the things happening around them didn't bother the blonde mystery in the slightest. To say those details made the blonde's rippled gaze all the more potent would be an understatement. Siko looked away for a moment from the pale gaze, waiting an uncomfortable few seconds to continue speaking. The other students in the room had actually taken time to stop their activities to listen in. Particularly the two boys stacking up boxes and flipping stables in front of the doorway. They looked quite interested in the explanation. I figured you seemed to be a good honorable man by the way you have taken care of Shinji-san sitting next to you, she said after a few moments, keeping her formal tone despite her recent lack of comfort under his gaze. She knew there was more to why his gaze was so unsettling, but the fact that she couldn't place why only left the unknown in its place. I only expected a man such as you to help them with the barricade to protect us from them. Putting almost as much emphasis on the world man as she did when referencing the dead. Naruto resisted his urge to outright snort at the thought of honorable. He was honorable when he was 12. That sense of honor died when he joined the NBU. He only gained some decent amount of it back through his battles with Pain and Hanzo of the Salamander. Both of them warriors with two different extreme ends of the spectrum when it came to honorable actions. Naruto settled for rolling his eyes. I'm not helping simply because it is a stupid idea, he said as he leaned back and relaxed in his chair. And Siko-san, if you want to help them, then help them. Being a man has nothing to do with it, Naruto said as he ran a hand through his hair as he thought back to all of the men and women he had under his leadership at various points in time. He glanced over to the purple-haired female before opting to glance at her wooden sword. Busujima Siko, you seem to have taken up the way of the sword. Samurai roots, it would seem, judging from the shape. Would I be correct? Naruto observed, doing his best to bleed through any small amount of charisma he was sure he didn't have despite a few close shinobi's insistence otherwise. Siko's small nod of acknowledgement was all Naruto felt he needed to continue. The way of the samurai is often regarded as a man's profession, he said with a calm in his voice despite the slightest narrowing of the swordswoman's eyes. Do you wish to be treated differently because you are a woman in the profession? After all, most women that came from samurai roots were often to stay at home and be housewives. Naruto finished recalling small facts about the way Iron Country was run. He could only hope that whatever world he was in had at least some sort of similar background. However, if he looked like a fool spouting about something he had no idea about, well, it wouldn't be the first time. The further narrowing of Siko's eyes told Naruto he had seemingly struck a nerve. Do you judge me because I am a woman who has taken up the sword? She asked, a cold look appearing in her eyes. Naruto noticed that Rei seemed to be equally tense at the implication, her makeshift spear leaning beside her. Naruto shook his head with a weak smile, but he quickly masked it with his regular expression. No, I don't, he said as if he wasn't paying much attention to her, before he abruptly turned to the now relatively surprised girl. Do you wish for me to do so? He asked the pointed question. Naruto had to admit that he was rather amused at the girl's casually shifting expressions. No, I do not, she said quietly, not realizing where this is going still. Partially due to values instilled in her from her upbringing, no doubt. Naruto smiled lightly at the answer, feeling as if he was given the Shinobi vs. Kunoichi pep talk to a rather sexist member of one of his team once again. Good. Because I don't plan to. However, if one wishes to be treated equally, one must accept equal responsibility. I am not helping those two build a blockade, because the blockade is just potentially more detrimental than good. Not because some silly irrelevant discrepancies between men and women. Naruto finished, leaving a deal of room for thought to wash over the entire room. Naruto-san, why do you think the blockade will be detrimental? Takashi asked with a jab of his thumb to where they had positioned tables and boxes in front of the door. Naruto suppressed the urge to talk down to the young student as if he was a subordinate that needed disciplinary action for his stupidity, and simply realized that he was a civilian boy whom was likely quite a bit scared. I don't go to this school. Naruto began quietly. But with the exception of the few old doors I saw on the second level of the school that slide open, all of the doors at this school open outwards. These doors are no exception. The amount of force and pressure needed to even knock down the door after it has even been locked would be far more pressure than would simply be practical. Not to mention, if we were really that worried, you could have just taken Miyamoto-san's spear and barred the doors. Naruto paused as he watched the recognition flash over the faces of those in the room. Now, as for the outright downsides to the barricade? You are wasting your time. You could be resting shifting around boxes and furniture. The hallways we each took were already well traveled and should have been cleared for us to get her safely. I hope that for you all it has been obvious that these blind creatures are only alerted to a presence by sound. Moving around a bunch of furniture was entirely unnecessary. Naruto sighed, and finally, on the off-chance miracle that these dead school children break down this door? Without a barricade, they will simply file into the room one by one, at which point you can just funnel them into being killed. With a barricade? They pile up on the door, and the sound of the shifting furniture they are making themselves proceeds to alert more. This process continues until a complete flood of them enters the room at once. And considering this is your only exit besides the second-story window? No, I think I'll pass on helping you erect that death trap. Naruto finished, fighting the urge to wince at the last comment he made. That one was probably unnecessary. The shifting eyes that went across the room and then to the barricade were more than enough to speak volumes for what everyone was thinking. I wouldn't worry about it now that it is in place. Like I said, the sheer chances of them even getting past the doors alone is slim to none. Naruto decided to add, if only to calm the nerves. Saya spoke up. You seem to know an awful lot about the Walking Dead, Uzumaki, she stated as she rested her hands on her hips, having not forgotten of the previous battle of words earlier. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I was carrying a girl around through corpse-infested halls. I could only kick them. You have to pay attention when it comes down to that. He lied through his teeth. The truth was, he noticed that they were blind the moment he started walking the halls. It was only when that awful announcement was given, and that students started screaming and rushing out onto the halls, that Naruto could no longer simply walk past the ones he didn't feel like dealing with. I know, I remember when you saved Takagi-san. You took it out with just your feet while carrying Shinji-san. That was so cool. Where did you learn that? Kota exclaimed with a great deal of enthusiasm. Naruto didn't blush, but he couldn't help the amused grin that crept up onto his face as Kota went on to proclaim his sweep and stomp akin to some sort of comic book hero. Him? A comic book hero? Yeah, right. However, the others that weren't privy to this detail recalled back on the fight now that the stress of battle had lifted during their relaxation period. However, while what was being proclaimed would indeed be quite the display of skill, the comment bringing them back to the fight all brought them back to a more pressing matter. Does anyone know what made one of those things fly backwards when he just arrived? It was as if someone had hit it really hard in the chest, but Ray began, but her question fell dead as there was no real way to describe what was seen. It simply wasn't possible. An invisible force knocking things away? Those were reserved for movies about warriors in different galaxies, not the real world. But then again, the dead coming back to life. Perhaps anything was indeed possible. Naruto shut his mouth at that and focused all of his attention back on to the silent girl beside him, and he simply put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Naruto could only hope that when he could get the girl to a safer environment, that she would open up a bit to him. He really doubted that Kimiko's last plea to him asking to help save her sister was simply on a physical level. Alright, this wraps up a second chapter to this story. I had a few people asking about the pairing in the story, or if the story will even have a pairing. I can confirm that the story will have pairings/relationships for the characters that are going to grow and progress over the course of the story. I won't say that I necessarily know how it will pan out from this point, as to not spoil it, and simply because I don't have every detail worked out for the story. That said, I already have a good idea. However, a lot of people were asking about it. Now I sent some replies to most people that directly asked about the story pairings and gave them an explanation. And frankly, as pairings for the story go, I don't care that much. I am going to pair Naruto with a character that fits him as the story unfolds. But If you have a character you want to see in the pairing, just say so. However, reviews that are like Naruto / with no explanation, most will often be ignored. If you can provide a reason as to why X character would be good with Naruto, I may end up taking that into consideration. I'm not some writer that is going to make a poll and say herp dy derp tell me what pairing you want, and I'll awkwardly work them in even though their characters don't mesh. First and foremost, I intend for this to be a good story because the Highschool of the Dead / Naruto crossover category deserves a better quality of those stories. Now all of that being said, I hope you enjoyed the chapter. Please review and tell me what you think of it so far. I know it is a bit different than standard given the changes to Naruto's character as well as his situation in this. So it is a bit of trial and error here. Any input is appreciated. Chapter 3. Ones who follow are forever at your back. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Highschool of the Dead. Naruto sighed, his bored expression evident to everyone around. They had been sitting on the stairs for 5 minutes easily, with a new smaller group of students now accompanying them. Truthfully, Naruto felt they were nothing special. They didn't have any visible evidence of formal training like Rei or Siko had. They didn't have any mechanical skills like Koda or the Dr. Shizuka. Even Saya had some element of genius to her. Although he personally would go as far as to call it genius to be exact, more so that she just knew a lot. He remembered quite clearly his genin days. Sakura was by no means a genius. She just knew a lot of stuff. Takashi, in Naruto's opinion, was the odd man out in the group. He too didn't appear to be anything special. He was just an average and normal teenager thrown into circumstances that were anything but normal. Although Naruto could admit one thing: the fire he saw in the boy's eyes. If he had anything, the boy had a lot of guts, and a lot of heart. So when Naruto rested his eyes on the new arrivals, he subtly wished that they had arrived a few moments later, when they would have been effectively turned. Not one of them even had a unique hair color that made them stand out. And given the group he had been with for the past 30 to 40 minutes? That was pretty sad. Are we seriously going to sit here and drawl over how we are going to make our way down the stairs, and get past what? 8 of these things? Naruto questioned, his irritation slowly growing. He was being polite, sticking around with the group. The doctor had assisted him with Aine, and even though that was her job, shit had obviously hit the fan here, and likely a lot of obligations people formerly held went along with it. And the fact that the girl was up and moving, albeit not talking, was still an improvement from her former state. Still, the longer they waited, only more of these living dead would appear. That wasn't something he was particularly fond of dealing with, since he would be walking out of this place since he didn't have the slightest idea how to operate the technology that the group kept talking about. Whatever this bus or car thing were. They sounded like something similar to the trains located in Snow Country, but he would wait to pass judgment. Uzumaki-san, you and Takagi-san both seem to have the theory that these things react only to sound. Someone needs to go and confirm that theory, Siko said in a quiet voice as she looked over the side of the railing to the hallway below filled with dead. Naruto resisted the urge to get a bit defensive at the fact that he was being questioned, particularly when it was 2 people with the exact same theory. Although he knew the older student was simply doing her best to take charge as the de facto leader of the group. She didn't want anyone to get hurt. Although that wasn't a cure to Naruto's boredom and frustration with waiting. Naruto saw that the brown-haired teen with heart was already ready to speak up and go down there to deal with the annoying little problem. Internally, Naruto kept telling himself, "Nope. Nope. Nope. Sit the fuck down. I'll handle this." He thought to himself as he stood up and pushed Rei's spear out of the way while he made his way down the stairs. He appreciated bravery Takashi was about to show, but the longer he stayed here, the darker it would get outside, and the harder things would become for him and his ward. "I'll do it," he muttered as he walked past quickly. "Siko, watch Aine-san for me," he said slowly to get the point across as he stared at them from halfway down the stairs. "Uzumaki-san, please, I should go first," Siko said abruptly, turning to the blonde, having stopped looking over the railing. It was evident that she knew someone had to go down the stairs to check, but she was just checking the surroundings because she assumed it would be her. Now that it was not. "I seriously do not have time for this," Naruto said seriously, his commanding shinobi tone bleeding over into the one he had used to speak to civilians and victims of the war. "I understand that you are all scared, but the longer we sit here, the darker it gets. The sun is already setting. And unless you all have a plan to see these things in the dark, we must go now." He didn't even wait for a retort that was potentially for his safety, or the fact that he was being rude, or whatever else he was prepared for. He frankly just didn't care. If he was going to keep his word, he needed to get the people here to this bus or whatever it was called. Naruto stepped down the stairs swiftly, pulling out an elongated kunai often utilized by Miss Shinobi. On missions around their country, they could tie a stick to the kunai and have a far more slick spearhead for fishing than what could be achieved with regular kunai. He imagined there was more to it when he wanted off the mist ninja under his wing in a game of cards. But he didn't care that much beyond that, often favoring a ninjutsu over all else if he was forced to use a weapon. Naruto, once he was down at the bottom of the steps, special kunai in hand, waited a couple seconds, his arms spread wide as if beckoning the things to attack him. However, beckoning a blind person with a wave of the hand never worked before. Naruto turned around with a deadpan look to the people on stairs, all of whom had moved down considerable to see the event unfold. Naruto heard the slightest bit of shuffling behind him, and the tense panic that rose in the faces of those on the stairs only further served to make him roll his eyes. They were blind, and they couldn't feel anything. That meant if he didn't say a peep, they could repeatedly walk into him, and think of him as nothing but a wall under the sun's rays. As if to prove his point, he turned to the creatures slowly walking towards him. And while he wasn't looking at the people behind him, he knew what he was about to do would make them nearly yell out. He gently placed his hand on the chest of the mindless student, and pushed it backwards. The dead student stumbled back a bit, and attempted to retaliate. But Naruto only had to take a step to the side to avoid the stumbling creature as it walked into the wall near the stairs. Naruto sighed heavily and walked halfway back up the stairs to the now rather wide-eyed group. Naruto fought the urge to snap at them and ask what the fuck they were staring at. But Naruto knew that they were looking at him as if he was simply a civilian. And as such they were looking at him as if asking the silent question of how does he walk around with balls that big. Naruto held his hands up to the side and then shrugged his shoulders, silently saying, "I think I proved my point." He then turned to Ain, and gestured with a finger. "Alright, come on, let's get you out of here," he whispered quietly. However, while mute, she still was perfectly capable of realizing what he just did. She got up from her sitting position next to the doctor on the stairs, and for a moment everything appeared to be normal. That was until she got close to Naruto, and took a deep breath before hitting him in the stomach. The punch truthfully had no effect as the girl quickly snatched back her hand and waved it in the air a bit as if she had just hit a brick wall. She then looked at Naruto with narrowed eyes that quickly became softened and dejected. The silence made it hard to have proper conversation, but the hushed whisper and some of the first words the girl spoke around the group were simply but telling. "Please don't do that again," she said quietly, her face casting into a frown. Naruto was personally just surprised from the sudden boldness from the former mute. But he supposed that while she may have her own issues, the apple probably didn't fall too far from the tree in regards to her and her sister's personalities. The group probably assumed that the girl was simply asking Naruto to buy all of their standards, not be an idiot once again. But Naruto knew the unspoken meaning of the statement was she simply didn't want to lose anyone else. He knew the look she was giving him far too well for it to be anything but that. Naruto nodded softly to the girl to ease her stress. He didn't know how long he could personally keep that unspoken promise. His idea of a risk was incredibly different than their idea of a risk. He didn't even know if it was possible for him to turn into one of these things. Not to say he was willing to try it. He still felt as if he was ever touched by one of these pathetic creatures, he should just turn in his shinobi license since his reflexes officially had degraded to being worse than a fresh genin's at that point. He turned to look up the stairs before motioning to the only other person he could actually justify needing. "Shizuka-san, please follow me. I will clear the way." He spoke in a soft, calming voice. Although it did serve to create a deal of tension within the now larger group. To them it probably seemed that Naruto was playing favorites. Naruto held back and laughed to not alert the downstairs residents. Hell, he was playing favorites. Despite the bit of tension that developed from him beckoning Shizuka to follow him, it appeared that everyone else took that as the cue to suit up and prepare to move out. Naruto grabbed onto Ain's hand as he held her close to him while he prepared to walk. But before he even made 2 steps, Ain had made 1. Naruto had to take a few seconds to stop his twitching eyebrow. The otherwise silent girl had about the subtlety of an oncoming train given how she moved in those heels she wears. Naruto turned to her and rubbed the bridge of his nose before pointing to the girl's shoes. He then raised his finger in the common motions as if to say, "1 second, wait here," with a single finger before a full flat palm. He may have been cocky earlier, but he didn't want to risk talking out loud standing only a couple steps from the walking dead with Ain in tow. The group seemed to catch this, and some even smiled at the delicate care the blonde seemed to take for the platinum blonde's safety. Ain seemingly understood, and took that time to move back up a few steps on her toes, using the railing for balance. She then proceeded to sit down on the edge of the first set of stairs as she took off her heels. Naruto, on the other hand, hadn't opted to wait. He merely decided to take the safer route, the route he should have taken 10 minutes ago. Killing the fucking things. Naruto moved up, knife in hand, tired of the purple swordswoman's ideas of avoiding conflict. The first corpse he saw got to greet the nice clean mist shinobi steel directly to its eye socket. There was virtually no sound heard as the knife cut through the eye like butter. Naruto proceeded to catch the crumbling dead student before softly resting it on the floor, not letting it make a sound. To say some of the onlookers were slightly disturbed by the efficiency of the blonde would be a slight understatement. Seiko was efficient. She moved seamlessly from abomination to abomination, cutting them down as if it took no effort at all, as if she had perfected an art form. However, the level of perfection the blonde before them was showing was somewhere between disturbing and disgusting. He had taken perhaps a minute tops to completely and utterly dismember an entire group of 12 zombies in complete and utter silence, all the while moving quick and seamlessly. The very last creature he killed, he grabbed by the back of the head and roughly slid him down the hallway, his head sliding into the lockers, securing their safety as the few remaining things proceeded to march to the locker and repeatedly bump against it as if it was their dinner inside. "All right, let's go, no one make a sound," he said quietly as he gestured for everyone to make it down the stairs. However, he just knew that somehow, someway, one of these civilians would find a way to fuck up the simplest of orders. An old wise man would have said the urge to curse is strong within this one, Naruto thought dryly. A strong urge to curse simply didn't cut it. How damn hard was it to walk down a flight of stairs silently? Sure, he could have expected perhaps some honest slight slip-ups, such as civilians just not knowing how to move silently. Ain's freight train footsteps earlier were evidence of that. It only made Naruto the slightest bit happy to notice she had seemingly took his silent request to heart, as she had run across this parking lot in her bare feet alongside the others. Naruto was sure that other students were probably a good deal envious as she made her way across the lot, no weapon in hand, yet safer than everyone else. The sheer thought that Naruto would let any of the monsters come within 10 feet of her was almost ridiculous after the promise he made, particularly in a chaotic environment like this. He simply couldn't save everyone. Everyone ran on to the lot yelling and screaming, and making all other sorts of unholy racket with their choice of weapons. The only one Naruto didn't have the urge to strangle was the chubby Hirano kid. The kid had taken to simply whispering to himself as he moved around in a slow but nearly silent jog. His weapon in hand would take care of the creatures with long-range, dull thuds in a single shot. A great big difference in contrast to someone like Takashi, who had taken up some unique kind of golden metal pipe and proceeded to swing it around him like some sort of unintelligent bandit. They had quickly filed onto the bus with, as far as Naruto was concerned, realistic losses. His earlier assessment of the other students that had picked up being nothing special would have been right. In fact, they were the reason this whole problem started. Then, not to mention, as far as Naruto was concerned, the ridiculous display that he had never and would never be able to fathom. The idea of meaningless sacrifice. One of the young girls of their group, completely in the clear, had opted to simply go back and die with her boyfriend, even after his dying words for her to run. Naruto sat in the large contraption called a bus. He had sat eyeing down near one of the seats close to the front. As far as he was concerned, this thing was just one big death trap that they filed into. But he once again told himself he would wait to pass judgment until the thing was fully moving. It was then, as he gazed out the window and the group was ready to go, that he once again got that sinking feeling in his gut, the feeling he had gotten as he stared down Kimiko and her group earlier that day. A group of people were yelling for rescue as they ran across the barely cleared parking lot. Naruto would be lying to himself if at first glance he had the strong urge to let them die, an opinion he seemed to share with the brown-haired spear wielder. Although he silently knew why he would let them die, and why she would, were completely different reasons. He simply couldn't stand the fact that there were 8 of them running, and not a single one of them was carrying a weapon. At least the idiots from earlier were smart enough to do that, however ill-equipped mentally Naruto felt they were. However, the more he watched, his shinobi practice kicking in. Truthfully, it was a practiced and instinctual surge of adrenaline most shinobi got when they were prepared to move. The footsteps of those out there running had simply slowed down as Naruto's quicker combat drilled mind sped up, side effects of the Kyuubi's presence. It was in that moment, as he stared at the leader just making footfall after footfall, did his mistake with Kimiko become all the more apparent. It was not his lack of desire to help that got her killed. He had wanted to help. It was his questionable lack of action as he mulled over the value of helping that got her killed. Naruto grimaced as he looked towards Ain, the girl he had been saddled with, sitting down with a worried gaze pointed to the running students. Not again, Naruto thought as he quickly stood and made it to the exit of the bus, brushing past the brown-haired bat wielder before many could react. "Uzumaki-san!" The purple-haired female protector of the group cried out as he stepped off the bus. "Watch the girl for me," he responded dryly as he walked at a brisk pace to the oncoming group led by a teacher with golden eyes. "Naruto-san! We don't have to save him!" Rei had yelled out as she grabbed onto Naruto's arm, having followed him off the bus. She had since given up on trying to stop Takashi from saving this Shido and his group. She had moved on to stopping the Bulza blonde-haired, secret shinobi. "You will regret this," she said quickly as she yanked Naruto closer to her by the arm. Naruto grit his teeth and turned briskly, stabbing a monster lunging at Rei's exposed and unmoving back. "So will you if you don't get back on the bus. Now go! Get the hell out of here!" he said in a commanding voice to the now startled Rei. Rei looked down to the ground where one of the creatures lay dead at her feet and paled slightly. She hated Shido. She hated him more than anyone else at this school could even begin to comprehend. But as the blonde before her played the most unlikely hero in her case, all she could do is remain silent and backtrack back onto the bus. The fact that the blonde had told her to do so as if it was an unquestionable order made it a lot harder to dispute as well. Naruto now broke into a light jog to meet up with the oncoming students. The leader of their group seemed to have quite a deal of speed to him if he was able to post up and usher them along with his hand before anyone else reached him. It was then within these next few moments, as he caught up to the teacher, that his blood had run cold at the sight before him. One of the students was running as fast as he could with a bag over his shoulder, that looked like it weighed quite a bit as well by the standard of a young civilian. In his hand he was clutching a large piece of paper. It probably would have been better off folded, but he imagined the weaponless squad simply didn't have the time. Naruto resisted the urge to cringe at the boy's bad luck as he took a vicious fall, crying out how he sprained his ankle. Even his bag had swung around and landed on top of him. Although Naruto knew the kid would still be fine, the closest monsters were still at least 15 feet away. More than enough time to be assisted on his feet, and get some help to be carried back. And then it happened. His trained shinobi senses picking up every word. "Oh, I see," the man said as he looked down upon the fallen student clutching at his pants leg. He then let a smile come to his face as he lifted his foot. "Well, I guess that's it for you then," he said in a far too cheerful voice. The image of the man's foot impacting on the top of the boy's head would be forever seared into Naruto's mind. "The world we've known is over. The powerless don't deserve to survive," the man said quietly as he looked down at his former comrade. It was evident though that he had thought he was alone, because the moment he turned around, the shocked expression that appeared on his face as the blonde came now rushing through, and shoving him to the side. It was another thing Naruto would never forget. Naruto grit his teeth as a life lesson he learned played through his head. You can judge the character of a person by the way he treats those that can do nothing for him. Shido's shock did not last long though. He needed to get onto that bus. And he wasn't going to stick around with the suicidal blonde to do it. It was then that he had opted to turn tail and run from his disgusting act of treachery. The blonde shinobi leader, however, did not. 3 seconds, he said softly in his mind as he knelt down with the students despite the oncoming monsters. It was in the first second that he allowed himself to take in the appearance of the boy. Broken, crying, and betrayed as he knelt there on the ground sure of his oncoming death. Clutched in his hand upon closer inspection was a map, now quite worn out from the fall he took. His glasses seemed to have cracked as his face impacted the concrete. But it was evident by the minimal damage that he didn't impact it too hard. Not enough to cause any sort of concussion. Though the slight few cuts from loose gravel had appeared on his forehead. 2 seconds, Naruto told himself once again. Naruto grit his teeth and hefted the boy up along his shoulders. 1 second, Naruto could literally smell the breath rolling off the dead students at the close of a distance. He may have been in trouble if he continued to do his best to hide the fact that he was a shinobi. But he was a damn shinobi. And the most recent treachery didn't even serve to brighten his mood. "Shinra-tensei," he muttered quietly. Only the boy on his shoulders would have effectively heard it. It was then that the 6 creatures that had come to surround the two were viciously blown back. This wasn't the please move from the doorway Shinra-tensei as he liked to call it, such as the one he used earlier against the abomination in the school. This was a full-fledged, bone-crushing, organ-melting forceful push that was used for combat. The creatures rocketed off in all directions, the amount of force shown to all of the onlookers as over in the bus. One of the monsters had propelled right into the school. His body slamming hard against the constructed walls, impacting with enough force to make an actual crater in it. A feeling he knew far too well from his battle with pain. Another creature blew off in another direction, rocketing at the fence before springboarding face first ricocheting into the cement. Naruto absently wished that he had the opportunity to see one of them fly off at such a force that upon reaching the fence, they simply slid through it like a cheese grater made of Samehada teeth. Although despite all of the onlookers, there was only a single cold gaze from Naruto reserved for the treacherous teacher. He was brought out of his gaze, and let it soften a bit as he heard the quiet weeping on his shoulders. "Thank you," the boy muttered between the sounds of nearly choking on his own fear. Naruto clenched his fists a bit as he came to realize what type of world he had been dropped in. A world where all obligations and senses of duty in life had gone out the window. When honor and loyalty to one's comrades had become a foreign concept. As Saya had said during their brief break. A world without order. Naruto simply nodded his head in response as he came to the realization of what he was going to do. They need a leader, he told himself with conviction as he thought back to the shinobi in his home under his command before gazing at the bus as he began his march. He shrugged the boy on his shoulders a bit higher before officially responding to the boy's statement. A reality and promise he had come to terms with just now, for himself. No man gets left behind, he said in a cool tone as he made his way to the bus. We need a leader, Takashi said with conviction as he sat in his chair that was slightly higher than everyone else's. I must agree, Sarutobi Hiruzen said in a calm but aged voice that demanded respect. His cool and collected way of speaking only served to remind those in the room that they were in the presence of the god of shinobi, a title only shared by one other. The Sage of the Six Paths. His mere presence was imposing in his own right. But the moment he had strolled into the meeting room with his students Jiraiya and Tsunade flanking him as his escorts, both of them worthy of the title of Kage in their own right. To say the powerhouse that was Konoha was still ever present and ever intimidating would be an understatement. It was considerably unnerving when three shinobi stroll into the room, and it was common knowledge that they could likely force the rest of the entire room into a stalemate. Their summons were unmatched, small and big. The only summon that could ever considerably oppose that sheer might of the ones the Sannin used would be those of the late salamander Hanzo. Although after his supposed death, the contract had all but vanished. There was also the fact that the famed Monkey King of legend was said to be even stronger than Hiruzen himself. The famed trickster was said to have fought against the legend of Jubai and lived through sheer skill and trickery. It was a feat that could never truly be confirmed. And when the Monkey King was seen, it wasn't so he could simply boast. It was often so he could cripple you unless you were a Konoha ninja. Still, it was unnerving because the older generation of shinobi had come to realize that even most legends have some truth to them. That was only further shown by Konoha's report on their battle with Pain. The fact that they could even get information on the enigmatic Akatsuki leader spoke volumes for their resources. Many shinobi they had sent in to aim for information had simply died. They had long thought that to be due to the overly security-conscious Hanzo. However, they found that to not be the case most recently. Hiruzen continued with his statement, and we should surround them with the brightest, the toughest, and the deadliest allies we can find. You sound as if you are gearing for a suicide mission, old friend. The Tsuchikage snorted briefly at the idea. He had no love for Konoha, particularly their former Hokage. But he had grown up alongside the third Hokage. Through war, and various Chunin exams and celebrations. Not to mention he held a great deal of respect for the professor. This war is a suicide mission, the elder Hokage said ominously, which immediately attracted the attention of the considerably younger Kages in the room. There was something to be said about the power of villages that were still on their third Kages, whilst other villages were on their fourth and fifths. The only exception being that Konoha had a fourth in the past, but he died. However, that Kage practically single-handedly won a war with his fighting skill, and shortly after defeated the strongest of Biju. Once again single-handedly with sealing techniques far beyond comprehension from multiple villages. The power the two villages held over the others was considerably unnerving. Even the proud Reikage was willing to admit that. His father was powerful. He would be able to make a solid argument for his father beating the Kages before him in a fight, some quite easily. However, he was not his father, and he still had much to learn despite his strength. Our enemies have found out a way to recreate my former sensei's ability to bring back the dead. All of our mentors, everyone that has ever taught someone in this room can, and will be used against us. The aged Sarutobi chewed on his pipe a bit, blowing smoke from his nose as he looked around. The third and fourth Kazekage. Washing over battlefields with gold dust and iron sand, he said as he gestured to the youngest Kage alive. The 7 shinobi swordsmen, of all generations, he said with a pointed look to the attractive Mizukage. Your father, he said as he stared the Reikage in the eye, a visible tension suddenly locking up his form. Your sensei, he said coolly as he gazed at the shorter man beside him. The shorter man didn't seem visibly tense or scared at that notion. But there was an unspoken level of fear for a few in the room. Few knew about the capabilities of a bloodline expansion, or the second Tsuchikage's mastery over it. That Akatsuki, Hanzo, the Gold and Silver brothers. Fallen Jinchuriki. He took a pause during his speech. Every powerful shinobi that has fallen can and will be used against us in this war. A strong team is necessary. You speak as if you have already been decided as the leader. The Mizukage noted as she crossed her arms over her chest. I was under the impression that you lost your Jinchuriki in Konoha's most recent battle. A voice from the upper balcony made everyone tense and turn, ready for action. Not quite. The voice called out. There was Uzumaki Naruto, in his Konoha ANBU gear. Accompanying him were none other than his former ANBU captain Yuzuki Yugao, and former Akatsuki member Konan, the Angel of Aim. Although while the appearance of the shinobi was certainly surprising, there was nothing they could do to hold back their surprise and fear as they gazed up at Naruto's eyes. Jiraiya was the first to speak what everyone had on their minds. The Rinnegan, he said quietly in awe, his mind drifting away to a prophecy about a world savior he had heard long ago. Naruto snapped out of his memories he had fallen into while looking out of the window of this bus. He had to admit this was a rather useful piece of transportation in this world. At first glance it was probably incredibly useful. However, as they drove further down the road, he had seen the types of transportation on fire, and quickly squashed the idea. It just meant any Katan or Raitan expert could send the car up in flames during war times. Still, if it was a time of peace, and they repaved the dirt roads around the village, these could be excellent transportation and trading vessels. It wasn't long before their blonde driver had taken them by the side of a cliff. During the act he had actually gripped Iain's hand a bit tightly from his seat next to her. Although that was more due to if he needed to escape the vehicle quickly upon loss of control. Much less so the speed they were traveling. He would admit it was fast. It was probably a tad faster than shinobi chakra-enhanced traveling in a straight-up race. But the fact that it was confined to roads simply made it inefficient in comparison to traditional traveling in Naruto's eyes. Although that was merely his personal opinion. He didn't really ever get tired. He could understand someone with lower stamina such as Sakura appreciating this sort of transportation. Naruto, on the other hand, had his favorite, and as far as he was concerned it was forever set in stone. Konan using paper to create herself angel's wings, and then would proceed to drop him into a battlefield from high in the clouds. A tactic he had developed in the war with creative use of both of their innate abilities. Nothing was better than the panic in the eyes of the enemy as he was coming upon them from the sky. We managed, I guess? Naruto rolled his eyes a bit at Takashi's comment. It wasn't very morale-boosting if you talked like you were barely scraping through encounters. Naruto stood up, and went over and grabbed Shizuka's medical bag. Yokota said quietly as if he couldn't believe it himself. Naruto turned to go back to the injured student clutching his face in a deal of pain, his bag in the chair beside him. He was right across from Siko, which that in itself wasn't a problem. If anything it was quite pleasant as she was the closest thing to a warrior he had found in this world. But the fact that the man dubbed Mr. Shido had taken to standing up beside her irritated him to no end. Naruto marched forward, an intimidating feat in itself as everyone had not forgotten the display the blonde had shown during his rescue. However, there was just no simple conversation started of "I know you were the one that caused all of those monsters to fly away from you. Do you have special powers?" In a civilian-dominated if not completely civilian world. Shido backpedaled a tiny bit, but as far as Naruto was concerned, kicking him off the bus wouldn't get him far enough away from the man. And as such, it was quite a push from Naruto that sent him stumbling back to the back of the bus that gave Naruto some deal of satisfaction. Despite the fact he nearly pushed the teacher onto the unsuspecting short-haired busty female in the back of the bus. Naruto rummaged through the medical bag while quietly saying, "Show me your face," while masking his irritation. "What's your name?" he asked, doing his best to keep an even tone. The boy replied with a stiff lip, "Kaji Shido," he said in a deal of pain. Shido, however, despite the look of fear in his eyes momentarily at being pushed around by the blonde, he took his fall gracefully and stood back up. "Thank goodness," he cried out a bit dramatically before walking back forward. Although paying keen attention of standing outside of the blonde's reach as he tended to the student's wounded face with swabs and checking for potential rocks or glass that got stuck in his wounds. "So would you be the leader, Byasujima-san?" Shido asked, slowly keeping mindful eye on Naruto. Siko, whom was more busy paying attention to Naruto do his work, barely even recognized being addressed. She was instead far more interested in why a man like Naruto did not have the slightest bit of callous fingers despite his skill with a blade. Even she gained rough hands from time to time, and she took extreme care of them despite her practice. "There's no such thing," she finally replied. "We just work together in order to live, that's all." "That's not good," he teacher replied slowly in a rather condescending tone. "In order to survive, we definitely need a leader." His eyes raised in excitement as he said this, "A leader who bears everything." Naruto had heard enough as he finished up with the student he tended to before quietly grabbing the map he had been clutching earlier, moving to put the medical bag at the front of the bus with Shizuka-san. Although he was stopped by Rei almost violently grabbing him and pulling him down to the knee. However, he settled for the seat across from her. "You'll regret this," she said in a harsh whisper. Naruto gazed back with a cold look. He wasn't in the slightest bit a fan of her repeated manhandling on this subject. However, he did gather a deal of respect for the girl as she continued to keep eyes locked with him, not faltering in the slightest. "I guarantee you'll regret that you helped him," she said with the same intensity, her voice hushed despite her conviction. Naruto pursed his lips as he gave a sideways glance to the teacher, returning to his seat before turning back to the brown-haired girl. "I know," he said quietly, not entirely paying attention to how he was speaking to the girl, and he let slip, "I should have killed him when I had the chance." He whispered so only she could hear despite Takashi's close distance. Rei appeared shocked for a moment that he would say such a thing before she began to look at Naruto in a new but wary light. But he continued, no longer caring since the metaphorical cat was out of the bag with her at the moment. It's not about him, it was about all of them, he said quietly, gesturing to all of the students that Shido had brought with him. I doubt you wanted all of them to die simply because you don't like one person either, he said quietly before he sat back in his seat, giving Ray the time to think and feel the weight of those words. It's like I said. A tall teen spoke out to the ground, having stood up after they drove by a small convenience store. It's only dangerous if we keep going. First of all, why do we have to go with Komuro? The large teen with 2 different hair colors all but spat. You guys are the ones who decided to go back to the city. Maybe we should have just looked for a safe place inside the school. Naruto resisted the urge to scoff at that. To him that seemed like a personal problem, considering they only met them because they were running to the bus out in the parking lot. A shorter and lankier new arrival further back in the bus seemingly agreed with the ridiculous statement though. He's right. The teen cried, we should barricade ourselves somewhere. Like that convenience store we just saw. This only prompted the bus to come to a screeching halt, and nearly throw the standing passenger off his feet. That's enough, the blonde doctor yelled down the bus. Although Naruto personally found it a bit hard to take the rather aloof big-chested doctor seriously, when he chest swayed back and forth while she tried to make a statement. It was one thing being a big-chested doctor like Tsunade Senju, whose skill in healing is virtually unmatched as is her strength, and the fact that she could kill most people with a finger flick if she so desired. It was another to be a like Shizuka-san, whom was pretty much the exact opposite of how Tsunade carried herself. I can't focus on driving with all of this commotion, she continued to yell. Yeah, whatever, the standing teen said slowly. The stress visible on his face told Naruto the teen was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Tell me what you want to do then. Siko spoke up, always trying to play the resident peacekeeper and protector of the group. I just can't. The teen yelled before pointing a finger toward Komuro. Naruto was sure there was some sort of story there. But the way Komuro acted, he didn't seem to know what it was. I just can't stand him. Out of the corner of his eye he saw to his amusement, Saya stopping Kota from firing off a nail at the yelling teenager. Why? Komuro asked as he stood up, not willing to back down and take what the multi-hair colored teen was saying. When did I ever say anything to you? A flicker of anger showed in the guy's eyes. Whether it be Komuro not remembering, or just white-hot rage, Naruto couldn't pinpoint. You bastard! He yelled as he started to charge with his fist cocked. Naruto almost grimaced at how much the scene reminded him of his childhood bouts between himself and Sasuke. Although the encounter was over just as quickly as it started, as Rei was quick to stand, and slammed her makeshift spear into the bigger teen's gut, causing him to crumple to the floor. Assholes, she muttered. Naruto could read in her body language her patience with the situation was wearing thin. Far more frustrated with the newest arrivals that Naruto was. Although I have been through training to suppress my emotions in stressful times like these, he mused to himself. Clapping, however, brought him out of his muses as he turned to Mr. Shido, now standing. Bravo! He began. That was outstanding teamwork, Komuro-kun and Miyamoto-san. However, at any rate, a conflict such as this only serves to prove my point. He grinned as he leaned forward to the 2 shorter teens. We need a leader. Naruto narrowed his eyes, realizing what was going on. Oh? And we've got only one nominee? Saya asked as she pushed her glasses further on her nose. I'm a teacher, Miss Takagi. And you guys are students. That alone makes it very clear who's more qualified. I can make sure we don't run into problems. What do you say, guys? He asked. Naruto had to admit the man did have some deal of charisma. However, as far as Naruto was concerned, he was dangerous. He would kill the man before he allowed him to lead the group. Some students stood up, clapping at his speech like mindless drones, until the majority of the back end of the bus stood and began clapping. I suppose it's decided that I'm the leader, from now on. By a majority of the vote. It appeared Rei had heard enough and jumped out of the bus at that, already seeing the eyes of students lighting up. Rei! Takashi cried out to the girl abandoning the bus. No way! She turned with a fire in her eyes. I don't want to be with him. I refuse. Naruto in the meantime had been looking around the bus, and realized one important detail that Shido had apparently overlooked. The real majority wasn't on board. No, you won't, Shido-san. Naruto spoke out as he stood up, a cold glint in his eyes. I will be the leader. And unlike you, I won't leave people behind to die. Naruto looked around at everyone, looking at him in surprise. Some of you, I have saved your lives outright, Naruto said as he gave pointed looks to Saya, Ain, and Saito. Others, I have risked my life for you. Naruto conveniently left out that there was really little risk involved in the stunts he pulled, in order for his personal little speech to hold any weight. However, one thing is certain, I have not turned my back on any of you. Everyone took a moment of pause as they looked over Naruto's form as he stood near the doorway of the bus. Even Rei was surprised, and had stopped walking off. She hadn't started walking back, but it was certainly a start. The group he had been traveling with started looking around at each other in surprise, before an unspoken agreement was made between all of them that was somewhere between. I want him as my leader, and he is better than Shido. One by one Saya, Siko, Koda, Takashi all spoke up. I vote for Naruto as the leader. This was followed by Rei. Despite her being outside the bus, she wanted nothing more than to see Shido getting kicked to the side for once. The blonde doctor looked on in surprise at the students that she was traveling with before she agreed with them. I vote for Naruto-san. This came as a bit of a surprise to the group, the school doctor siding with a student over a teacher. But they personally couldn't complain. Shido could only watch in horror as he realized that his fate as leader of the group suddenly rested on the fate of the next 2 votes. Shido stood up and leveled a cold glare that was holding back an untold wrath for Shido. And Naruto understood completely why. Rei was angry with Shido. But if anyone truly had a bone to pick with the man, it was Shido, who was formerly left to die due to Shido's actions. I stand with Naruto, he said, gently removing his glasses and cradling them in his hand before standing. They were on their last legs as it was. He desperately needed them fixed. Suddenly it was like a wave of relief washed over the entire front side of the bus, as they realized the last person to cast their vote was none other than Ain. I vote for Naruto-san. She spoke quietly, once again few words. Naruto glared at the treacherous man before speaking out in a commanding voice. Then it is decided. I will lead. He spoke out loud, before pointing his finger directly at Shido, and you will follow. Shido flinched but leveled a dangerous glare at Naruto at the teen usurping what he deemed as his leadership. He whispered to himself so no one could hear, or so he thought. But what was said caused Naruto to tense a deal, realizing he was only commanding a group of civilians. The one who follows is forever at your back, Naruto-san. Naruto clenched his fists at that. He wasn't in the slightest bit afraid of Shido. He was merely afraid of what the crazed man would do to the people he now proclaimed were under his protection. A loud noise, however, broke everyone from their thoughts as Siko yelled out, Dr. Marikawa. Sure enough, an oncoming bus was rushing at the tunnel at full speed. Rei! Takashi yelled to his childhood crush in fear as he tried to get himself off the bus in time. Although there was no way a civilian would make it in time. A ninja, on the other hand. Naruto vaulted over the seats and people was an impressive display of quickness and agility, before he was out of the bus. He barely even made contact with the ground as he had jumped out and scooped up Rei. And then, in order to avoid the oncoming bus that was tipping over in midair, he allowed his momentum to take him into the tunnel before him with the girl in his arms. As the bus crashed into the tunnel, he quickly covered the smaller girl under him as rocks and flaming scraps flew past them. Damn it, Naruto said in frustration, quickly sitting up after the initial impact and looking at the entrance. Rei! They heard Takashi's voice yell. Shortly after, it was followed by another. Uzumaki-kun! Yelled Siko in a deal of fear. Are you all okay? Naruto grit his teeth at how awful the situation turned out. Even flaming monsters were piling out of the crashed vehicle. Find a place to stay for a couple nights, he yelled. You are Komuro are in charge, use force if you need to. He added the last half as an afterthought. Protect Ain. He yelled the last bit. He honestly doubted though they would ever understand why. To the group, Ain was probably a quiet question mark. She didn't display any unique talents or skills. She didn't even talk much. And given her anxiety, it wasn't as if she was the best team member you could think of. However, for Naruto, Ain's chakra reserves were essentially a giant homing beacon in this virtually chakraless world. It was the only way he was really going to find them again after issuing out such vague orders. Rei, are you alright? Takashi yelled his question over the roaring flames. Rei, still under Naruto, blushed a bit from the position, but quickly rose up onto her elbows, not exactly want to push around her savior. I'm okay, Takashi. She yelled back, a small smile knowing that he was worried about her. The smell of gasoline spilling, however, caused Naruto to pull Rei up. We need to run, he said as he pulled the surprised girl along. Siko and Takashi both seemed to take that as a warning to get the hell out of there as well. And the warning was sound, as it wasn't even mere moments after that when a large explosion rocked the tunnel. Alright, well, I guess this wraps up another chapter of the story. I don't know how I feel about posting this quick and whatnot. I personally would have preferred to hold this chapter a couple days more, but I figured what the hell. People are reviewing and giving input, so I might as well post a bit quicker. Anyways, as you can see how I am writing a bit with this story. Naruto thinks over things a lot, and plays a bit more of a silent type in this story. You can see his thoughts, but the characters find him a bit more enigmatic. The reason for this is for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, this is not the type of Naruto that would put everything on the line for people he doesn't even know. You will get to see that more thoroughly as time goes on. Anyways, I got some interesting opinions on the pairing requests. However, I have yet to have any of my personal opinions on them change. An example for me would be, Just because Shizuka is innocent does not make her a proper candidate to be paired with this particular Naruto. Same can frankly be said for any generic answer. While some I admit a bit better with their generic answers, X, Siko is a killer, and enjoys it, fits a bit better than, Shizuka is so innocent she would counterbalance Naruto. While they both may be reasons, Siko fits outright, whereas Naruto would essentially have to change to be with Shizuka. While neither options are bad ones. It is just how I am judging how you make pairing requests. So if you expand on your suggestions, and try and sway my opinion, I'll listen to it. I actually look forward to it. However, simply stating a loose generic answer won't do that for me. Finally, if anyone is wondering, more dialogue will be slowly working its way into the story as Naruto slowly but surely gets more comfortable around other people. Right now, though, he just isn't, and for that reason doesn't talk. So all in all, please review, tell me what you think from big to even small details. I'm trying to make a good story here, and all input is welcome and appreciated. Edit. Since I was still around on the site after posting, I'll respond to this particular review in case others have a similar question. Dark Snyder 05. Shinra Tensei. Kinda had stopped there. That is beyond silly. Right now I have no idea who this story is about or who your character is. He's some random guy with blonde hair who's called Naruto. He's beyond weak, can't handle a school full of zombies. It's sad. First thing, no shinobi would hide their skills because where they're from everyone has those skills or is able to gain them. It's not rare or unusual. So why would any shinobi think these people have never seen chakra before? Why oh why does he need the lameness that is the Rinnegan, the most overpowered bloodline that makes this even sillier for zombies? You started this FIC saying normal Naruto would have been a hero and tried to save the city, which is true. The person you're writing about has a bloodline that is literally nuclear bombs for eyeballs. You want to write about a quiet, stealthy Naruto, yet you've given him the loudest, most showy bloodline of all. There is no hiding the effects of that bloodline. Consistency URG. This person is just annoying, and as a leaf ninja he's pretty much a failure. I have already established at the start of the story that this Naruto would be different than the normal canon Naruto, simply because I felt that canon Naruto wouldn't fit in this universe. So the typical actions that a canon Naruto. The boy who was a paragon poster child Benin, always fighting for what was right, learning under Jiraiya and saving Tsunade. This Naruto does not exist. The timeline was changed as was his training. So choices that Naruto made in canon wouldn't necessarily be the choices this Naruto had made in his life. For example, in regards to the Rinnegan, the normal Naruto let pain rest in peace, only for his eyes to be taken later on by Tobi. This Naruto, however, was trained differently, and would have acted differently because of it. Whether that be by asking for Pain's eyes, Conan's help, or even taking Pain's eyes by force. Whether that be to use him for his own, or destroy him. He would have handled the situation differently. And for that reason it showed. As for shinobi not hiding their skills, why wouldn't they? Shinobi always hide their skills unless they need to be used. A perfect example would be when Kisame and Itachi confront Naruto and Jiraiya only to be interrupted by Sasuke. Itachi didn't use a single skill he didn't personally dub as necessary. He didn't do anything flashy to stop an incoming Chidori, he just moved the arm out of the way. So when Naruto furthermore realizes that none of the people in this world have chakra, that is an even greater reason to not want to showcase his abilities. As for him having a loud showy bloodline, just because someone has a loud showy bloodline does not mean they try to be loud and showy. It is like if Itachi was born with the Rinnegan. His bloodline may be loud and showy. However, would that personally stop him from his pacifist ways? Would that stop him from being a silent Ambu, perfect example of shinobi? No, it wouldn't. Anyways, I'm sorry you feel that way about the story. Hopefully you get to see this, because you have your private messages are turned off. Chapter 4. For tonight I'll be your cornerstone. Disclaimer: I don't own Naruto or Highschool of the Dead. An important note, short but read, I want to let it be known that for any reader unfamiliar with how I write, the relationships in the stories I write are never simple. So just because you see characters getting close does not necessarily mean that they are the pairing, it just means that two characters are getting close. After being on the site for nearly 10 years, I know how people get when they see characters getting close like this. I just don't want to see the reviews flooded with "I can't believe you made it Naruto's blah blah blah. Have you not listened to reviews? Etc. 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 So without further wait, please feel free to read on. Naruto took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair before he heard the sound of movement that wasn't raised. A monster had launched itself from a flight of stairs at the young Uzumaki, fully intent on biting the young man. The irony of the whole situation was that the monster was wearing a helmet for some reason. Regardless, the thing didn't stand a chance. Naruto caught the monster by the helmet in midair, and then slammed him to the ground with enough force to kill the abomination and crack the helmet. Ray frowned heavily at Naruto's immense display of strength. His body did not seem to be the type that should have been capable of displaying that much power. I don't understand how you are able to kill these zombies with such ease, Naruto-san. It is like you have practiced doing it? Rei commented, hoping to sate her own curiosity. Naruto, on the other hand, was more curious about her own comment than her question about his abilities. Zombies? He asked curiously before looking down at the being under his hand. Hirano-san was going on about creatures similar to these things being called zombies in TV shows overseas. She said quietly, how tired she was becoming quiet evident by the way his shoulders were lax and how she held her spear. Naruto frowned as they stood up, his eyes still cast down. Well, at least I have a name for the creatures now, Naruto thought to himself. Naruto shook his head as he reached into his back pocket for the map he had quietly borrowed without asking from Saito when he finished tending his wounds. He moved without saying a word to be under the street lamp, as Rei quietly followed. Naruto crouched down on the grass by the river and the street lamp as he unfolded the map in the light. He could honestly see incredible well in the dark, particularly given his profession. But making out small details on a sheet of paper in the dark would still be quite troublesome. And then as he unfolded the map for the first time since he had appeared in this world, he felt lost. He had been able to seamlessly get his group out of the school, as well as gather their respect from his bravery and skills. And all of that now weighed down on his inability to read a foreign map. Rei had stuck her spear into the ground in a bit of surprise. Oh? A map? Where did you get that, Naruto-san? She asked, trying to be polite to her leader. The idea seemed so foreign and strange to her. Just yesterday she was an everyday girl. A smart one that got straight A's, but still rather regular besides that. She had good father, a bit of an eccentric mother, a sweet boyfriend. Then in one day, everything had changed to the point that she needed a leader and a map to even walk down the street effectively. I took it from Saito to look at after I finished with his wounds. I would have given it back had all of this not happened, Naruto said in a bit of frustration, still trying to figure out where he was, having been used to working alone. Or alternatively working with a few shinobi he trusted that could either fly or had been in the field for quite a while. Rei felt a pang of guilt at that thought. Never did she think that the boy before her that couldn't be more than a couple years older than her would command more authority over her classmates than Mr. Shido, a teacher. It was pretty much completely her fault that they were stuck out there now. Sorry, she said slowly as she crouched down beside Naruto, being mindful of her rather short school skirt, and not wanting to give Naruto a free show. However, that thought didn't seem to cross the boy's mind in the slightest as he looked around past her as if she wasn't there while gently tracing his finger over the map. What are you looking for? Rei asked with a soft raised eyebrow, silently thankful for the boy's respect and self-control. Where the hell we are on this thing? I'm not from around here, Naruto said a bit distastefully. This wasn't even like a standard map. Saito, the student that had this, likely had some sort of project or something with the map. It was littered with numerous notes, as well as with very small stickers. Every shop was labeled. It was as if he was busy trying to make a full layout of the city, without simply taking a picture of it from the sky. Rei seemed to notice the slight slip-up Naruto spoke of as she leaned a bit over the map, moving onto her knees, thankful that the grass was dry. You're not from around here? She asked quietly, trying to make conversation. Where are you from then? She asked as she brushed her hair behind her ear before leaning and looking over the map. After a long day, and many suppressed snorts and scoffs, Naruto had let one through. You wouldn't believe me in the slightest even if I told you, he said rather confidently, although in Rei's eyes he didn't appear as if he was trying to be insulting. Rei just took it in stride, looking to know more about their now supposed leader. Well, how about this? I tell you where we are, you tell me where you're from, she said with a smile, trying to make a small but bright game in their gloomy situation. Naruto's eyebrow twitched a bit as he thought she should tell me where we are regardless of what I tell her if she doesn't want to get lost, but nonetheless he nodded. Even if he told her, it changed nothing as she wouldn't believe him. It was part of the reason he didn't feel the need to develop any form of a relationship with the few students around him. The moment he dropped eyeing off, he could figure out how to get home and be done with everyone else. Although that probably wouldn't be the best thing to tell Rei at this given moment. All right, she said, a bit of cheer in her voice. She seemed like the type to enjoy meeting new people. Probably more so before this world went to hell, and less so now. She gently moved Naruto's hands off the map before turning the map and proceeded to point to a spot. We are right here. We just moved through this tunnel under this highway. Naruto pursed his lips as he looked over the map in a new light with the additional knowledge as he plotted his course of action, judging from where he could sense Aien's chakra from here. Fine, he muttered in a bit of annoyance, not entirely wishing to be forthcoming as he folded up the map so it would just show the particular section they currently resided in. I'm not from this world, he said as he stood up and gave Rei a serious look. Rei looked him in the eye, seemingly upset at his lie. But as she continued to stare, and his expression seemed to be unwavering, her eyes comically widened. Wait, are you serious? She asked in almost a yell of surprise as she thought of the display in the parking lot that had gone utterly unexplained except for that no normal human could do it. Naruto did a double take as he turned to face her fully and looked at her incredulously. You believe me? Naruto asked, not quite believing that she actually believed him. If he was in her shoes, he sure as hell wouldn't. Rei frowned as she too stood up. Well, why would you lie? She asked. What's the point? She said as she tilted her head to the city that had pillars of smoke rising from various areas. I mean, it would explain what you did in the hallway and in the parking lot, I guess. I suppose it would also explain why you are dressed weirdly and carry around weapons while in the school. Not to mention your skill with them. Naruto didn't know how to feel about her easy acceptance. Initially, he simply felt she was just foolishly naive at the mere question of why he, a shinobi, would lie. That and the fact that she had said he was dressed weird. Naruto pursed his lips and said nothing as he began to walk down the road. Rei was almost a bit surprised by this action as she scrambled up off the ground and picked her spear out of the dirt. Well, I mean, that's true, right? She asked as she caught up in step with the blonde. Naruto spared the girl a glance, still trying to comprehend her acceptance. Yeah, it's true. I just don't understand why you are so accepting of the idea, he said a bit sourly, under the impression she was pulling his leg. If she honestly believed him? This wasn't the situation he was originally counting on. Were people visiting from other worlds common here? The thought tightened the warrior's stomach, even though he knew it shouldn't affect him that much. Rei blew a few strands of hair out of her face as they settled into a brisk walk alongside the blonde. Well, she began thoughtfully, yesterday I was just a regular girl going to school. I went to my classes. I had a good boyfriend. I went to clubs and spent time with my parents. However, today everything changed. The students I went to school with I had to kill in order to escape. Those students that ended up dying would come back from the dead to try and kill us. I guess I don't know what to think anymore. How strange is someone being from another world, when everything else in the world has turned to chaos? She asked. Their formerly brisk pace of walk had slowed as Naruto let her words sink in. Naruto pursed his lips and figured it wouldn't hurt to throw the girl a bone and open up a bit. She didn't outwardly freak out when he let slip he was thinking of killing Shido earlier. I'm from the elemental nations, more specifically Fire Country, in the village of Konoha, he said quietly to gauge her reaction. They walk once again had stopped as he gazed at her. To her credit, it took Rei only a moment to process what exactly was said. However, before a serious frown could appear on Naruto's face, she nodded. Well, what's it like? She asked. Naruto relaxed a great deal as he took in the tone of her voice. Her skepticism was completely apparent, but she was just being polite not to completely blow him off. He could deal with that far better than he could deal with what he formerly assumed was blind faith. Different, he said as he looked around at the large buildings in the distance, once again beginning a slow pace, one which Rei evenly matched. This world is a lot more technologically advanced than where I'm from. Like, we don't have these cars or these bus things that you all have. However, at the same time, the people are a lot weaker here, he said honestly. Although Naruto realized this did serve to make Rei a bit upset if her scowl was any indication, so Naruto elaborated. I don't mean that as an insult, he explained. Where I am from, most of the world is at war with each other. A large portion of the population trains to become shinobi or ninja, I guess I should say, from their childhood. Naruto explained in simpler terms for the young teen walking beside him. Rei's skepticism was quite refreshing as she looked at Naruto incredulous. You're saying you're a ninja? She deadpanned as she looked at him as if he had just said he could create a moon. Naruto nodded, further emphasized by him pulling out a kunai and a shuriken from one of his pouches as if it was a show of proof. Rei took a good few moments not moving as her eyes moved over Naruto, then up to his face before back to the weapons in his hand, before repeating the process. Rei grimaced as she realized that perhaps she didn't want to know that her world was this far turned upside down. Zombies, and now real-life ninjas appearing in her world. Her social bubble used to be so peaceful. She took a deep breath and decided to ask, and how young are you when you start training to become a ninja? Her twitching eyebrow was rather amusing as she couldn't even believe she was asking the question. Naruto held back his amusement and stated bluntly, 4. Rei tripped. Although Naruto was quick and caught her by the waist before she slammed into the concrete, but he could no longer suppress his giggles. Are you just screwing with me? She asked with a glare taking in his chuckling form. No, I'm being completely serious. I'm honestly surprised you are this understanding, he said with still barely contained amusement. Rei grit her teeth at that. Well, so it's like a military rite? Naruto nodded his head at that, but said nothing. So what rank were you? Rei questioned as she ushered Naruto over to a fallen motorcycle. A silence fell over the duo as Naruto got a faraway look in his eyes and they took a few minutes to set up the bike and roll it up the hill. It was during these moments that Naruto was able to truly think about everything that he was trying to get back to in his world. Everyone that was counting on him. Rei almost thought he didn't hear her question. However, after she got ready to get on the bike, she got her answer. I was commanding general of the Joint Shinobi Alliance forces. he said with a detached voice as he looked down at the bike, not really caring all that much about what they were doing anymore. Ray looked a bit surprised, but she did her best to hide it. That rank sounded pretty high. But she didn't particularly want to jump the gun as she had no idea how high that rank actually was in their military. How high of a rank is that? She asked curiously. Naruto pursed his lips at the thought, the highest rank ever achieved in the elemental nations, he said quietly. That seemed to end their discussion on his home world for the time being. Naruto-san. Please. Can you hold on to me tighter? It's hard to balance the bike when you lean back like that, she said loudly as the wind whipped past her face. She had to admit that it was almost comical the situation they were in, although she would never actually admit it out loud. Ray didn't want to sound arrogant, but she knew that as a woman she had all the right curves in all the right places. Training with her dad at the police station with bayonets had considerably helped with staying in shape while keeping a good figure. Joining the Spear Martial Arts Club only further helped her body. And the fact that her body grew rather young, given that she was only 15. She had quite the body. So the fact that she practically had to beg Naruto to hold on closer to her just so she could keep the bike steady was almost comical. Multiple times she had needed to pull over and stop just in order to find her balance on the bike once again. She had never driven anything in her life, and she wasn't entirely fond of the idea of having to learn how to drive in some sort of zombie apocalypse. Hell, she never envisioned herself driving in the first place. She personally always felt that if anyone in their group would ever be driving, it would always be Shizuka-sensei or Takashi. Takashi always had a thing for driving the few cars he had the opportunity to, even though he never had a license. She resisted the urge to swing an elbow back when the blonde seemed to heed her request in an almost comical fashion. He had opted to scoot up extremely close and virtually cling every muscle on his chest to her back. He proceeded to wrap one arm tightly across her stomach, while another arm across her chest, latching his hand onto her shoulder. He then rested his chin on her free shoulder. And then he proceeded to start speaking in a bored tone, much to Rei's frustration. I know we're going to crash, Naruto drawled. Am I holding tight enough? Although silently Naruto would never admit, he had almost perfected annoying his allies after his battles and encounters with Toby. Rei sighed, thinking her life couldn't get much more frustrating than that moment. But she couldn't help but smile at the blonde's antics, despite the fact that she probably would have hit him on any other occasion. It seemed that after she had accepted him opening up to her, he had loosened up quite a deal in contrast to how he was around the others when he was on the bus. Yet as quick as the antics began from the blonde, they quickly died. His grip on the brown-haired girl in front of him considerably softened, and he once again leaned back again, just enjoying the ride Rei could only assume. He had even removed the rather offending arm, and simply settled for a handle lightly resting on her stomach. Although she secretly felt that he was just doing that for her comfort. While he said he didn't know how to drive or ride the motorcycle they were on, his balance on it was flawless. He didn't falter for a second as she went through some twisting turns. He had even helped her stabilize the bike a couple of times. The ride was mostly in silence. They had probably been driving around for nearly a couple hours. Naruto just would occasionally pull out the map from his pocket and point in the general direction he wanted Rei to go. It was quite ridiculous in her opinion. She felt like the general's personal driver as they rode around the city. She, however, was broken from her thoughts when the blonde spoke. Is there any way to make this thing go any faster? It is going a bit slow, Naruto said calmly in her ear. Rei looked down and frowned, the meter saying she was going 64. She knew it wasn't that fast. Takashi would brag sometimes about going speeds at least 10 or 15 higher. She personally didn't even feel comfortable going that fast, given that at any turn they could be coming across a vacant car. And given this was her first time driving, on a motorcycle no less, she wasn't a huge fan of the idea. Why, do you want to try and drive it faster? She asked. She knew her lack of confidence was bleeding through, but she didn't particularly care at the moment. She was more just focused on not ending both of their lives in something as trivial as an underage driving accident with those zombies walking around freely. Naruto's answer only served to surprise her though, and she didn't know what to think. No, it's not that. It's just if this is as fast as we can safely go on this thing. You should just let me put you on my back so I can run. It's pretty late, and I'm sure you're rather tired. Rei raised an eyebrow at that. Was he just insulting how she drove the motorcycle? No, I can make this go faster. She relented with a frown. Just let me go stop for some gas, she said quietly. She wouldn't admit it, but Naruto's statement made her feel well bad. Almost like he didn't approve of her. Beforehand, when they were just running around through the school, she would admit that he was brave and skilled. But to her that really meant nothing. She didn't need his approval. The only thing that really mattered was getting to safety with Takashi. It was likely the ideals everyone had in their group. Everyone had arrived in pairs of two, and each one had specifically looked out for one another on a level far greater than that of which they looked out for other people in the group. However, now it was just him and her. She didn't even know if she would ever even get to see Takashi again. Naruto didn't seem to be worried about finding the group. But he only said that they may need to find a place to sleep for a few nights. He didn't say any more than that. They were expected to track down a group of people in a zombie-infested city on a whim basically. Ray didn't have much hope. Then add to the fact the blonde's background? He was some sort of super-trained ninja from the age of 4 that achieved the highest military rank in his world by 17. Ray's body tensed at that. At the fact that she realized that she indeed was seeking his approval. The girl leaned forward on the bike slowly as and began to speed up. And quickly, that 64 on the meter had turned into a 94. But more importantly, Naruto had taken to wrapping both of his arms around her form in order to hold on, and said nothing else about the speed of the ride. Naruto smiled lightly as they came to a stop at what Ray called a gas station. He didn't quite understand what it was, but there was gasoline where he came from. Just no stations dedicated to its distribution. The ride, he had to admit, had been rather boring for the first part of it. The speed was only a little bit faster than the speed at which a ninja could comfortably run. But then you had to take into account that a ninja was often running across water, or up cliffs, or through tree lines. And overall the ride was rather dull as it simply followed relatively open roads into the city. However, the last part of the ride, after his suggestion to carry Ray, he didn't know what changed, but she decided to go faster. He had to admit the ride was considerably more fun as they reached speeds that no ninja could hope to run at for a long distance without any special abilities involved. He just hoped he didn't hurt the girl's feelings or that she didn't take what he said the wrong way. "So what do we do here?" he asked with a raised eyebrow, as he unwrapped his arms from around the girl. She gave him a look that was silently asking if he was an idiot before she quickly realized his rather unique situation. "Right, you don't have any idea what this is, do you?" Naruto simply shook his head and voiced his earlier thoughts. "We had gasoline where I came from for stoves and whatnot, but we didn't have a place dedicated to distributing it. It simply wasn't in that big of supply. Particularly after someone developed a unique power source that siphoned the power from seals that had Raiton chakra stored inside of them." Ray looked at Naruto curiously for a moment, almost expecting an explanation to seals and chakra. However, Naruto seemed a bit lost in thought as he looked around the gas station as if he was hearing things. Ray shook her head and sighed. She knew that she wouldn't gain a total understanding of the blonde after spending only a few hours with him. And she could accept that. She just wished she had a bit of a greater knowledge base of anything revolving around him. All conversation about his personal life had died on the note of his military rank. "All right," Ray said. "Well, this looks like a self-serve gas station like the ones my dad occasionally uses. I don't have any money though, so you are going to need to go in there and break the register for some cash," she said, calm, volunteering the shinobi for the job. Naruto didn't seem to care. He just nodded his head. "All right, be careful, I'm hearing something out here, just keep your guard up," he said as if he was talking to one of his shinobi under his command. However, the statement didn't serve to make the young schoolgirl any bit safer. She now silently wished that she was the one going into the store to break the register. She did have some level of comfort though. She felt Naruto was probably only hearing a distant zombie or something like that. And given how they always seemed to stagger and groan upon approach, if she remained relatively silent, she could get the jump on it. Naruto stepped into the store and took a glance around for a second, extending his senses. Upon knowing the coast was clear from the simple few seconds it took to check, he walked over to the register and stared at it for a moment. He then knelt down and saw a keyhole in the bottom of the register, and quickly went through his tools to pick the lock in order to not make noise. Ray sighed as she was lost in thought. She leaned against a stone column in between a couple stations for distribution of gas. Her mind wandered in between what Takashi was doing, and the few bits and pieces of information she had learned about Naruto. Part of her knew that Takashi would be safe, particularly alongside Busujima-san. However, that thought didn't make her feel that much better as a sinking feeling of jealousy crept up inside of her. There was a time where she and Takashi were close, but then one day quite abruptly that time had come to an end as his friend Hisashi had proven to be there for her more so than Takashi had been when she needed him. She knew it wasn't completely fair to be jealous, and to want him to stay away from the purple-haired student that was technically her senior. After all, she by all accounts had a boyfriend only about 12 hours ago. Still, that didn't stop the sinking feeling in her gut that wondered if he even cared if she was jealous. And the thought that she slightly hoped that he was jealous of that fact that she was alone with Naruto. However, all of those thoughts came to an abrupt halt as something crept up from behind and grabbed her. She let out a piercing scream, as something grabbed her chest, believing that any moment, a bite to the neck was coming. However, it was then as whatever grabbed her ripped at and eventually ripped off her school shirt, and pointed a knife at her throat that she realized she was not dealing with a zombie. And it was why this person got the jump on her despite her thoughts being elsewhere. A zombie did not have the intelligence to sneak up on a person like a living, breathing human being. At least as far as they knew. That thought quickly died though as the sick freak proceeded to grope at her now barely covered chest, and started to fiddle with her skirt, while holding a knife to her throat. He was breathing heavily, and she could only pray that nothing further would happen. Naruto had rushed outside with the speed of a seasoned shinobi the moment he had heard the scream, and his worried face instantly turned into a cold one at the sight before him. It was barely a couple articles of clothing from rape, and that thought alone soured his mood. He had seen quite enough of that before the war with all of the various bandit camps that were able to skate by being on the outskirts of country borders. Far enough away from the shinobi villages, but close enough to being able to cross a nearby border so that shinobi would have to risk provoking an act of war in pursuit of them. Rei's face that was formerly one full of a confidence that he respected. Now that same face was one that was filled with distress and panic. She was growing teary-eyed by the second at her situation. Yeah well, who can fucking blame her? Naruto added his conscious thought. Hey bro. Your girl is pretty cute. He taunted Naruto. Kinda surprising really. You dress like idiot. He barked out a laugh. Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes at the last bit. His clothes were his clothes. Call him an idiot for wearing them all they wanted. The clothes had a very fine link weaved only possible by an expert craftsman that made the clothes he was wearing virtually a suit of armor. The link laid in between a couple layers of fabric that had seals in it to regulate the temperature of the fabric to a comfortable degrees, up to the shinobi's personal preference. He wouldn't give up his clothes in this hell-bent world for anything but a way back home. You should let her go, Naruto stated calmly. Although he didn't want to draw a weapon, he knew he was perfectly capable of using that idiot's own knife against him the moment the opportunity arose. You dumb? Like hell I'd do that. If I'm going to survive this monster-filled shithole, I need a woman. He only further made his intentions clear as he groped Rei's breast, trying to peel the bra down, while still maintaining firm control over her body. I'm going to repeat myself again, you should let her go, Naruto said with a cool edge to his voice. Are you insane? The guy asked in response. Naruto resisted the urge to snort at the irony. All of my family turned into those things in front of me. I had to smash Ev. Shut up, I don't care. Let her go, or it will end badly. Rei's eyes bugged at Naruto's statement. Is he trying to get me killed? She kicked out of the man's arms and got a couple steps forward, but couldn't get further than that before the man gripped her by her chest once again. Naruto clenched his jaw at Rei's move right there. She nearly slit her own throat open trying to break out of the man's grip. He shot her a very pointed glare, but she didn't even notice as she cried out at being touched again. You don't care? The man gave a crazed laugh once again before moving in closer on the girl. Her tits and her voice are might fine. And this ass, he said as he clutched at her throat with a knife, ripping her skirt off with a deal of force. Naruto's eyes narrowed further at the action. He never appreciated hostage situations. The reality of hostage situations is that 9 times out of 10, if the person has only a single hostage, they aren't going to kill them. Because doing so would only mean that they were going to be killed moments later. So you often just had to stand there and watch often disturbing things until a proper opening was shown. However, at this distance, with this idiot, Naruto, despite his rising anger, was sure he wouldn't have to wait much longer. Hey, you fuck her, right? Every night, don't you? The man asked as Naruto kept a cold blank stare. However, he did tense a bit as the man's hand began to wander further south. It made Naruto just want to take the risk and make the kill, despite the obvious danger. The man raised his arm back up at Naruto's lack of response. Or wait, you don't. You idiot! He burst out laughing. Now fill up the fucking bike. While I have fun with Naruto! Rei cried in fear and panic at the thought. Naruto clenched his jaw and took a step forward. And he honestly wished he had done so earlier, as it prompted a rookie mistake. Fill up the bike or you'll be D. He pointed the knife at Naruto, instead of the hostage. Naruto was in the guy's face in a second, Naruto utilizing the man's own fist and arm to jab the knife into his throat, before slitting it open in a shower of blood. The man crumbled to the ground wide-eyed, dropping his knife and clutching at his throat. Dead? Naruto asked, finishing the man's earlier sentence. Cold, dead eyes of a shinobi. A frightening sight, truth be told. However, the shower of blood that rained down from a throat being viciously cut open being poured on both Naruto and Rei did not stop the girl from running into his arms crying. Naruto adopted a surprised look on his face as the near-naked girl crashed into his chest sobbing over the very near-rape experience. However, as she leaned against him sobbing, he was suddenly brought back to the 6-year-old blonde running down the street pulling pranks, proclaiming that he was going to become Hokage so that he could protect everyone. Naruto pursed his lips as he slowly wrapped his arms around the girl, despite the dying man at their feet. She needed someone to remind her that she was safe. And tonight he was reminded of a time where he wanted to keep people safe. Chapter 5. A Calm Before the Storm. Disclaimer: I don't own Naruto or Highschool of the Dead. Once again, the actions in this chapter don't solidify any form of pairing or whatsoever. It is just character building in general. I don't know what the pairings are as of yet, Naruto sighed as he carried the sleeping girl in his arms up the side of an apartment building. He wasn't all that keen on the idea of actually going through the apartment complex while Rei was actually asleep in her current state of dress. So he opted for taking the ninja's way into an apartment. Chances were given how scarce things were in the city, it would be pretty easy to find an empty apartment that was likely to be a bit sparse where the two of them could relax and get a night's rest. He would hope that it would be a good night's rest, but he figured that would be a bit much to ask for after the events that unfolded nearly an hour ago. Naruto evened his breathing as he hefted himself onto a third-story balcony of the apartment building he had stumbled upon. The glass door was open, but he highly doubted that meant any type of security risk. As far as he had seen, there were no such things as flying zombies. All he had to worry about was the potential for them to be in the room he was about to enter. Naruto set Rei down gently outside on the balcony, before taking a large leap to just gain a moment's vision of the roof of the apartment complex. After everything that happened that night, he wasn't about to lose his sleeping friend to something as random as a zombie walking off the side of a rooftop. Friend, Naruto thought over with a pause when he looked down to the blood-stained brown-haired girl. Since when had he ever started thinking of anyone in this world as a friend? Sure, there were people he would protect, and had protected. He even had what he felt were his own personal obligations to people due to guilt and unspoken deals as well as various other things. However, he never once really considered them friends. Naruto looked down at the girl who, despite the stressful night, appeared to be sleeping rather peacefully. It was then that he realized why he thought of the girl as a friend. She had accepted him, and accepted him practically instantly without much of a second thought. There was a time in his life that Naruto remembered vividly where he wished to be accepted, and how he dreamed to be acknowledged by those around him. How desperately he wished to have a friend while he was going through school. And the fact that he had achieved such things so easily with Rei left an oddly warm feeling in his chest coupled with a sad emptiness. The warm feeling was obvious to him. He merely wished he could have shook the cold feeling that crept up in him and told him that he could have had a better life if he had ended up in this world sooner. Naruto shook his head free of thoughts and stepped through the threshold of the apartment before slowly and quietly closing the glass door behind him. He hoped Rei wouldn't wake and start a panic, because Naruto knew he was only going to be gone for a couple moments. And with that he was gone in a flash. The speed at which he was able to search room to room of the empty house would have been incredible to anyone that wasn't a shinobi. He barely needed to spend no more than 5 seconds in each room in order to effectively check the room high and low for any unwelcome guests. He pushed aside the irony of the fact that he himself was likely an unwelcome guest. It was quick, effective, and decisive. He had cleared the house in exactly 27 seconds, and was opening the glass door with the house lights on within 30 seconds. He gently stepped inside with Rei scooped back up into his arms only to gently lay her on the couch. He made his way through the house, taking a closer look at it now that he was sure it was safe. It was obvious that there had been quite the struggle in the house. There were tables and chairs flipped over in what could only be considered the living room. Kitchen knives halfway drawn out as if someone was deciding upon choosing that as a weapon, before finding something else. Even the sink's cold tap was slowly running. However, he doubted the apartment owners would care. He frankly doubted the apartment owners were alive. He moved his way into the bathroom, and prepared a hot shower before moving into the bedroom and giving it a once-over glance. He had the slightest smile of appreciation at the former owners of the house. They kept their room clean at least, even the bed was made, and tidy. Naruto had the sick cold but slightly amusing thought flash through his mind of the idea of there instead being a resident maid, and in the process of making the bed she was attacked by zombies. She ended up scrambling into the living room, crashing over furniture only to get into the kitchen and searching for a weapon. The idea that she found the knife rack, but instead opted for hitting the creature with the next closest thing such as a cooking pot before killing it. She then proceeded to carry the body out of the back door, and dumping it off of the balcony, and leaving the apartment not bothering to close the glass sliding balcony door. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest as he played over the scene in his head in amusement. But the amusing scene for the trained shinobi died at the realization of the lack of blood in the apartment. No, the people that lived here were probably simply evacuees. Naruto moved back into the living room and silently grabbed the fallen tables and chairs, and proceeded to barricade the door, another thing he felt slightly ironic given his barricading his for failure speech he gave earlier in the day. However, he shook his head clear of his thoughts, confirming that he knew what he was doing. He was a ninja. Rei knew he was a ninja. There was nothing to hide. If he needed to make an escape, he would simply take her and jump off the balcony. Or alternatively jump onto the roof. He still had plenty of escape routes despite barricading the only plausible zombie entrance. He then moved back into the bedroom, and reached into his ninja tool bag, pulling out his trusted sealing scroll. Standard Umbu issue. Compact, sleek 10 feet. He unrolled it a perfect 2.5 feet before resting eyes on the neatly scrawled seal of just what he needed. He reached down to the scroll with 2 fingers and gently channeled a tiny bit of chakra before the universal sound of sealing scrolls popped in his ears. With a tiny bit of smoky wisps of chakra, before him laid out was a smaller female uniform used by Umbu Division. More specifically, Yuzuki Yugao's uniform. She had long since told him that he was going to be carrying one of her backup uniforms in case that hers ever got torched. She wouldn't be walking around naked, or in civilian clothes, which in her opinion she deemed to be considerably worse than prancing around naked. Naruto absent-mindedly ran a finger over the clothes before he came to the chest area and sweat dropped a little. Ray may have to make a tight fit, he thought to himself in a bit of amusement. The crazed guy at the gas station was hitting the nail on the head every time he described Ray. It was just the circumstances that made it so damn unflattering. Naruto sighed as he removed his hands from the ANBU uniform. She'll have to make do, he thought to himself. It was rare for shinobi to have assets such as Ray. The few that did were often forced to wrap their chests in bandages quite tightly in order for them to not interfere in combat. That or they simply favored long-range combat such as Yuhi Kurenai, so it didn't matter as much. There was only one Tsunade Senju in the world. And he highly doubted there would ever be another in a long time. And with that fleeting thought he made his way back to where he had laid Ray down before he scooped her back up into his arms. He smiled lightly at the way she curled up into him. But that fleeting thought passed as he walked her into the bathroom with the now hot running shower. Naruto frowned as he absent-mindedly wondered what he should do with the girl in his arms. Should he wake her and let her do it herself? Should he just set her in the tub and wash her himself? Should he set her in the tub and wait? Should he undress her and proceed? There were so many questions floating through Naruto's head. Truth be told, entering ANBU at a young age really changed his outlook on things that he felt were rather trivial, such as modesty. The ANBU showers were co-ed. And sometimes after hard missions, some of the members would even partake in their own form of stress relief in the showers. It just really became hard to care after a while. Entering ANBU is akin to reaching the peak of your shinobi career. Very few move past that position, such as Hatake Kakushi, or the Hokages. It is there that one realizes that the entire body is a tool that can and most likely at some point will be used for killing. The showers just turned into some awkward form of bonding moment where comrades could go after a mission and relax, not as men and women ogling the fairer sex, but comrades and soldiers relaxing in a rather relaxing environment. It was akin to the hot springs, with the exception of the peeping toms and perverted teenagers during the co-ed times of year. However, it was through these means that Naruto felt cross as to what to do. He never experienced anything remotely similar to civilian dating, or even standard shinobi dating. ANBU tended to date inside of their branch, as it often allowed the couple to be sure of secure secrecy with one another. And he highly doubted seeing civilians naked was the same as the stress relief situation it was for ANBU. Naruto frowned intensified. Perhaps I should just go for it before the water grows cold, he thought to himself. He moved in closer before aiming the shower directly down the drain before setting her down at the back of the tub. He quickly stripped his shirt so he wouldn't be dealing with having to run around completely wet the next day before he reached up and grabbed the detachable shower handle. Naruto sighed as he lightly ran the hot water over the girl's feet at first. It wasn't scalding hot by any means, it was simple shower water, and he was sure he could pour it over her head just fine if it weren't for the fact that they had been outside in the cold all night. Ray seemed to be stirring from her sleep as Naruto silently continued to wash the drying blood of her body, occasionally using his hands to rub off the few dried flecks that had hardened and stuck to the skin. It was only when he had moved the water to Ray's upper body that she realized her dream of relaxing in a hot tub was indeed not real, and she nearly slipped around with a yell of surprise as she saw it was Naruto giving her a bath. "Ah! What are you doing?" she all but squealed as she attempted to cover herself before flicking a bit of water in his face. Naruto was out of his element. He could deal with skilled kunoichi perfectly fine. They had the concept of a body being a tool down just fine. They appreciated respect and modesty. But they completely understood that being seen naked by a fellow shinobi was not going to be the end of the world. That, of course, is as long as you are not intentionally trying to perv on them. Teenage civilians from seemingly other worlds? Not so much. I am what? Naruto asked as if he didn't know how to answer the question before he looked at the shower handle, and raised it up, allowing a stream of hot water to rise and fall. I was showering you because you were asleep? He half said, half-assed. He had done this for Yugao a few times after a strenuous mission without outbursts and complaints. He didn't really tire out, so it didn't bother him in the slightest. Ray had gone completely red in the face at the scene playing out before her, almost completely aghast at the fact the young Uzumaki didn't seem to find anything wrong with their situation. And you don't find anything wrong with that? She nearly yelled, but controlled her emotional state and remained relatively quiet. She didn't even know where she was being showered. Naruto, whom had grown quite adept at hiding his facial expressions over the years, only opened and closed his mouth, looking her in the eyes for a second curiously. Not entirely sure if she was serious of if she was messing with him. No, I don't, Naruto answered, slightly unsure of his own answer, but decided to give his most honest one. Rei's retort died on her tongue, as did her anger partially. You don't find anything wrong with this? She questioned, a serious look of her face despite her posture seemingly relaxing. Naruto shook his head as it seemed the situation had once again calmed down, and he gently ran the water over her hair, where most of the blood was located. I used to do this for another female ninja that was my friend. She was part of my team. And she was often wearing less than you are right now. Naruto explained as if that answered everything. Rei sighed as the hot water ran over her head and her hair. It seemed like the night was becoming full of circumstances where she normally would have been very angry, but her anger simply died as the weight of the night crashed down on her. She leaned her head down further between her legs for a moment, letting the water wash on her back as she quietly thought over her current situation before sighing once again and sitting back up. I can't believe I'm doing this, she said quietly as she looked up and over to Naruto, who was crouched down to a knee next to her. Look away for a second, she said. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but like a dutiful soldier and unlike a teenage boy, he turned away for the girl. He heard a bit of shifting around in the tub before two wet slapping sounds hit the floor beside him. He looked down without turning around and realized it to be the girl's remaining articles of clothing. You can turn around, Rei said tensely, but quickly added on, but I swear if you are just looking to grope and stare at my tits, shinobi general or not, I will beat you to death with the shower handle you are holding. She finished with a promise as Naruto got to turn around and stare face to face with her intense gaze. Naruto turned around, and doing his best not to give her an instinctual once-over glance at her now new appearance, he handed her the shower handle. She gently took it as he reached back around her for what she could only assume was soap or something. Rei, on the other hand, suddenly had it sink in as Naruto raised up his body over her to reach behind her for the soap. The hard and sculpted, but heavily scarred chest in front of her was not something she ever anticipated from a 17-year-old teenager. She knew that Takashi likely didn't have a scar on his body. Hell, Takashi didn't even have anywhere near Naruto's body. She honestly doubted anyone she had ever met had a body like that. Even her mother, whose level of physical fitness was one she came to accept as one of the best bodies around, even she would probably never compare to one of the shinobi Naruto apparently commanded in his other world. It was a bit silly that she had warmed up to the idea so easily. But if anything proved it, the numerous scars that covered his chest alone spoke volumes for his story. She blushed a bit as she had just complained about the idea of him staring at her, and here she sat doing nothing but ogling him entirely in the few moments that she could get away with. Silently, she almost wished that she hadn't told him not to look. It was obvious to her she found the boy attractive, but now she didn't even know if he was even going to look at her now, which was frankly disheartening. It is a sad thought in anything when one would put everything out there to be seen, and then only being barely spared a glance. She hoped that wouldn't be the case. Her ogling stopped as Naruto came back around with soap in hand, and a free hand full of bubbles. Do you mind holding the shower head? He asked seriously. Rei stared and blinked at the blonde, only to stare some more. Do I mind holding the shower head? She had to fight down the urge to scoff at the idea. I just spent the past 30 seconds ogling you and you asked me about the shower head. Now I really feel guilty about telling him not to look, sure, she said quietly. It was then that Naruto proceeded to go over her body again with his hands, and Rei couldn't help the heat rising to her face. Just who the hell was his lucky teammate? She thought to herself with an uncontrolled blush. She probably would have felt bad if she realized how far away the thought of Takashi was from her mind during her current situation. So who is your friend? Rei asked, resisting the urge to jump a bit as he went over her feet with his surprisingly soft hands. Yuzuki Yugao, he said quietly with a distant smile on his face. She was my ANBU captain. Rei gained a weak smile at simply seeing a smile brought to her companion's face. What is ANBU? She asked a bit curiously as she got the blonde ninja to further open up to her. It was a bit obvious from the moment of hesitation as he rubbed her lower legs that he wasn't sure if he should be answering or not. Before he spoke, ANBU is the term our military uses for essentially its Black Ops division, he said, choosing his words carefully. There are other more specialized and secret branches of the Black Ops division, such as a traitor branch root, or the Hokage stem, but ANBU is the general one, Naruto explained as he resumed rubbing his soapy hands up Rei's legs. Rei was initially surprised that the blonde before her was in anything that could be considered a Black Ops program. However, that surprise died as she recalled that he became a general and most likely rose through the ranks to get there. She knew vague bits about the versions on her own world as her dad would often talk of their skills sometimes over the dinner table. When did you join ANBU? Naruto frowned a bit at that thought. I was almost 13. I joined shortly after making Chunin. Rei's head turned so fast she thought she was able to get whiplash. You joined a Black Ops division when you were 13? She yelped out in surprise. Rei knew that Naruto's silent nod was all she was going to get on the subject, as he proceeded to wash up the sides of her body, having finished with her legs. Well, what can you tell me about Yuzuki-san? Rei asked curiously to keep the boy talking. It was relaxing to just simply talk after a day like this, even if the subject was so strange and foreign to her. Naruto gave an amused grin the moment her name was spoken. She hated formality when not in the presence of a higher rank. It was actually her fault when I came into command of the shinobi armed forces that everyone started calling me by my first name instead of something like Uzumaki-sama or something like that. Naruto continued washing Rei, absent-mindedly moving onto her arms. She was quite the person, but she was also incredibly strict. She required everyone on her team to be in top shape and ready for action at all times. She even supervised a lot of our personal training. However, when she realized that I had a lot of stamina, she kinda just started spending more time with me. Naruto said, not noticing Rei's blush intensifying as her teenage mind ran through the many implications of his stamina and Yugao. However, she said nothing. Naruto took her other arm into his hands and continued to wash her. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever get over the rather ridiculous first impression she made on me. For example, on one of our first missions, since I was new to the squad and I joined into the division from a rather low shinobi rank, she took the entire team on a rather simple mission. I was only 13, and I was willful and headstrong. Frankly, I see a lot of me in you at times, Naruto said with a smile, which was gently returned. But anyways, after the mission she ended up taking me to the stream and had me wash her down completely. Rei's eyes bugged at that. You were 13, wasn't that irresponsible? She asked in surprise. Naruto laughed a bit while he moved to turn the water up higher a bit as the hot water was starting to die. Yeah, a bit. At least in my opinion. A lot of the older generations believed if you were old enough to kill, you were old enough to well do other stuff, he admitted. However, I personally blame more the company I later found out she was spending time with. She lost her husband during an invasion from 2 enemy villages. After that she started hanging out with Mitarashi Enko, who is pretty much the queen of irresponsible deeds. Naruto mulled over the situation in his head a bit before shrugging his shoulders lightly. Besides, she understood that I was 13 and rather inexperienced with the whole sort of deal, so she let me explore? I was quite shy about it back then. However, I enjoyed it, he said as if he was trying to find the right word. Naruto raised up his wrist and gently wiped his brow where he felt his own little flakes of dried blood staining his hair. He politely grabbed the shower head and washed the flakes away down the drain. Rei, however, was still flush red at the idea of Naruto exploring a grown woman's body when he was 13. However, that flush quickly turned into a grimace as he continued. The reason is because where I'm from, he said as he lathered his hands once again in soap. The body of a ninja, male and female alike, is considered a weapon. This is stemmed from every limb to every pore of the body. The mind. Sometimes even the eyes of shinobi are considered to be some of the most dangerous weapons. However, Yugao wanted to teach me how to avoid temptation of a woman, because in some villages they are specifically trained to use their skills in seduction to kill their targets. Much like how praying mantis females kill and eat the males after mating. Rei paled at the implications before she looked up to Naruto in the eyes. She desperately wanted to ask if he had ever encountered a shinobi like that, but she bit her tongue. That probably wasn't the proper thing to ask. Rei closed her eyes briefly as the water poured over her body before she gazed into Naruto's eyes as she asked the question. You said the eyes are considered to be some of the most dangerous weapons? What about your eyes? She asked, finally taking the time to look at his eyes up close. It wasn't easy to notice with a fleeting glance as the blonde's eyes simply looked to be a fancy mix between hazel and gray. However, upon closer inspection it becomes evident that there were in fact thin rings around his eyes, ripple-like almost as they were branching outward from the center. Rei suppressed a shiver as Naruto finally moved onto his chest with his hands. However, despite that fact, he was simply gently wash over her. She honestly wished he perhaps would have done something, anything. It was like it was a cruel form of teasing to be touched in such a sexual way, yet not. Naruto smiled down at her. My eyes were actually a gift from someone. The legend says that my eyes are gifts from God, he said seriously. Rei's gaze broke a bit as she shook her head and suppressed a shiver as a roaming hand went over her nipple. Or perhaps it was at his explanation and his hinting that his eyes were in fact transplanted and not his own. She personally figured it was the former, but if questioned she was ready and prepared to deny it and write it off as the later. Before she tried to redeem herself and crack a perfectly normal smile. Isn't that a bit arrogant though? To say they are a gift from God. Do you really know? Rei asked, almost intimidated of looking back into the eyes that now have that description. Naruto shrugged his shoulder a bit as he went back to lathering his hands in soap before moving to her stomach. I don't really know honestly. The legends say that they are a gift from God. Only one other person in history has been documented to have these eyes, and that was the Sage of the Six Paths, who was the man that founded the shinobi world. It is said that the one who has the eyes is then blessed with the ability to forever change the world. For better or for worse, Naruto said quietly as he thought over the words to himself as he looked down at his hands. Rei silently wished she hadn't asked about his eyes. They were beautiful. But with their beauty, the weight of the world seemed to come with them to rest upon his shoulders. It was probably a rather sour talking point. However, her mind stopped that train of thought as she sadly realized that Naruto had indeed not looked down to glance at her body once. She didn't know whether to be impressed for his incredible self-control, or disappointed at the fact that her body didn't seem to make it crack in the slightest. "Did you enjoy your times like this with Yuzuki-san?" Rei blurted out. She almost felt the urge to hit herself out how silly, childish, and rude she felt at what she was sure was asking about a rather personal moment. Naruto took a pause, having never really put much thought into it after he had grown up a bit. It had become far more routine than anything that was considered a childhood joy. "Yeah, I did," Naruto said honestly as he finally slid his hand down further to her womanhood, the touch nearly making Rei jump at the foreign virgin feeling. "And what about your time like this with me?" she asked, her cheeks a fiery red as she closed one eye and squinted with the other. Partially from the foreign pleasure and partially from being afraid of the blonde's possible answer, his possible rejection. However, with her one squinting eye she was able to catch sight of the smile on the blonde's face grow even wider than the mention of his teammate. "Yes, I very much enjoy the time we have shared, Rei-chan," he said, the chan suffix bleeding over a bit from his more childhood years when he still had some innocence about him. However, it didn't matter because what he said brought a huge blush to Rei's cheeks. Rei resisted the urge to gasp at the fact that his hand was still down there. Her legs squeezed together in surprise as she pursed her lips upon receiving her answer, as some kind of electric fire roared through her, making her squeal out in surprise as her vision went white. An act which quickly caused her to cup her hand over her mouth with her eyes wide. She stared at Naruto with wide eyes, her chest heaving up and down, her cheeks a flushed red. Naruto too was blushing a lively red color, as he too realized what he had just done for the girl sitting beside him in the shower, partially forgetting the little bit that his ANBU captain had convinced him to add into his washing routine after quite a bit of insistence when he got more comfortable around her. Oh, he knew exactly what he just did unintentionally while his body was on autopilot. He gently withdrew his hand, suddenly feeling 13 years old again as he stood up. He paused as he looked down before he jabbed a thumb to the door. "I'm going to go get a towel," he said slowly, his cheeks still red though nowhere near as red as Rei's. Rei just gave an embarrassed nod as she tucked her knees in closer to her body, a smile and a blush for the moment stuck on her face. Naruto ran a hand through his hand at the thought of what just unfolded, his cheeks having finally calmed down a bit. It was only moments later that Rei came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a fluffy pink towel. In Naruto's opinion, this apartment had to have belonged to a female given the choices in towers. He would have sated his curiosity by simply looking at the clothing available. However, it appeared that all of the clothing had been effectively cleared out. Pink fluffy towels aside, whoever formerly lived here had to have lived a rather Spartan lifestyle with the overall lack of things in general in the apartment. "What's this?" she asked curiously as she saw the clothes laid out on the bed, the scroll having since been tucked away. "This is one of Yugao's A and B uniforms. Your clothes from before were well ruined," Rei thought dryly, having since gotten over the fact, as well as the rather brutal murder Naruto inflicted upon the man, not to say he didn't deserve it. She personally couldn't have cared if he had done worse. "Well, yeah," Naruto deadpanned as he looked towards the uniform. "It is probably going to be a bit of a tight fit," Naruto began as he looked towards a blush slightly returning to his cheeks. "You have bigger assets than she did." It was Rei's turn for her blush to simply return full force from the bathroom. Not trusting her voice, she simply nodded at his explanation. She walked over and proceeded to look over the uniform, and her eyes widened slightly as she continued to pick up various articles of clothing. "How do I put this on? There has to be at least 10 different pieces here," she said in a bit of panic. Naruto flushed a bit at that, remembering his first time experiencing having to put on ANBU gear. Going from a jumpsuit to a 12-piece set of custom-fit quality gear was definitely a bit of a change. "I'll help you dress," Naruto said calmly as he moved over to the pile of clothing, not looking to Rei's face. However, she once again looked as if she were about to faint. The night had gone from one of terror and emotional stress to one of teenage first-world problems over the course of no more than 40 minutes. Naruto, however, while he didn't see her, could literally feel her embarrassment. He laid out all of the various pieces of clothing on the bed before taking a deep breath and turning to Rei. He clapped his hands together with his eyes closed, fully intent on trying to solve the problem the way his sensei had solved the problem with his own shyness. Naruto opened his eyes and quickly handed Rei a rather lacy matching pair of bra and panties. "Sorry," he muttered, silently cursing Yugao's rather naughty taste in undergarments before turning away. Rei let the towel drop to the floor and slipped into the 2 articles of clothing. It wasn't long after Naruto spun around handing her a pair of pants. However, before he handed them to her, he quickly spoke. You are very beautiful, he said with conviction and nod of the head before continuing. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. You have an amazing body, he said as if almost stating things off a checklist before handing the pants off. Ray still had a blush but was a bit taken aback from the sudden swarm of compliments. She simply sounded hoping for an explanation as she balanced on one leg slipping into her pants. You being embarrassed and blushing was making me embarrassed and blushing. That shouldn't happen, Naruto said honestly, a rosy tint to his cheeks but otherwise nothing else. Ray raised her eyes suddenly gaining a rather confident but knowing smirk. Oh really? It was just because I was embarrassed and blushing? She asked in an incredulous teasing tone. Naruto quickly spun around and handed her the skin-tight top that went under the standard ANBU plate. He only hoped that it would fit Ray as it was skin-tight for Yugao. Yup. He tried to say it in an acceptable tone, but it got a barely passing. Ray grinned. If he was going to try and convince himself of that, she was perfectly fine with teasing him and showing him otherwise. Oh okay. Whatever you say, General, she said leaning in closely to whisper the last part into his ear similar to how she teased her late boyfriend as she had both arms into the shirt, before she attempted to pull it over her head. She didn't get to see the light shiver that went down Naruto's spine at that, and he shook his head to get rid of his building blush. He grabbed both of the leg guards off of the bed and knelt down to quickly strap them onto her shins. Don't be tempted, Naruto. If you find yourself in a position where you cannot escape temptation, use that temptation against your opponent. Naruto sighed as he repeated the voice of Yuzuki Yugao, his mentor, over and over in his head. It was then that he nodded his head and looked up at the girl still trying to fit the shirt effectively over her upper body. Naruto gave a cheeky grin and held on a bit closer to the girl's legs as his face was right as her exposed stomach. Do you need help? He asked. Every single word was a hot breath blown across nearly right at the edge of her pants. Naruto actually had the pleasure of getting to see her shiver at that. Yes. She yelped out to get him to stop. Just pull this damn thing over my head. Naruto stood up and held her a bit close as he pulled down a bit roughly on the shirt. He didn't want to slam her entire body forward in the process of simply putting the thing on. The pointed look she had on her face as she crossed her arms under her chest clearly said something along the lines of, haha, very funny. However, Naruto didn't mind. She started playing, and his mentor's closest friend was Anko Mitarashi. He could certainly play the game if he wanted to. So instead of giving an apology, he merely gave a cheeky grin that would have been out of place if she bothered to recall the face he wore when he cut down the man who attacked her before. Thank you, General, she said with an amused smile which made Naruto's grin falter. Are you really going to keep calling me that from now on? He questioned, slightly serious. She merely reached over for the arm guards. I'll stop when you admit that you were blushing because of me, and not simply because I was blushing, she said with a smile on her face. Naruto gave a small grin as he nodded his head a bit, fastening the straps of the arm guards she pulled on. He then reached over to the final big piece of the puzzle, the ANBU breastplate. Are you sure you? He said with a questioning gaze to the piece of armor he held on his arm, before outright looking at her chest for the first time. Ray picked up on the unspoken question and nodded her head. It was tight to get into, but it is actually quite comfortable and warm once I got into it, Ray answered as she raised her arms up. There was also the unsaid fact that she wanted to wear the full set of armor, partially due to the fact that Yuzuki-san seemed quite important to him. She didn't want to simply mix and match her specialized gear even if it was a tight fit. Yeah, Naruto mumbled as he gently pulled the breastplate on over her head. ANBU gear has its issues. It's absurdly tight, and annoying to get on if you aren't used to it. But it has a few special seals woven into the fabric that allow for it to regulate temperature, and stretch to form-fit the body. However, I still hate putting it on. I frankly started to favor a mesh shirt over it simply to not have to deal with the frustration, Naruto said absent-mindedly as he situated the side straps as Ray continued to hold up her arms. Naruto then turned back to the bed and grabbed the last couple articles of clothing. Shoes and gloves, he said as he held them out in each hand. He kinda wished that he had Yugao's mask to see what she would look like as an umbu. But he wasn't too keen on going into his scroll and taking out his own personal mask. There were a bit too many memories revolving around that mask which he hoped would stay buried. It was only no more than a minute after that she had gotten on her shinobi sandals and gloves. And Naruto in turn had opted to dig onto his pouch for a unique item he felt was for special occasion. Ray had since stood up and turned to Naruto with a small smile on her face. She felt strangely good. Sure, they weren't her own clothes. And sure, part of her was telling herself that she looked a bit weird. However, Naruto's comments served to brighten her spirits considerably. Wow, he said with a bit of surprise, taking in her full appearance after having actually taken a couple steps back. You look like a real ninja. Ray smirked and crossed her arms. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that ninjas are actually real, she said in amusement. Naruto merely smiled in response before extending his hand. In his hand appeared to be a small metal pipe, but a small indent on the side. The third Hokage of my village had a personal summon named Enma, the Monkey King. Enma was an expert staff wielder, and had the ability to even transform himself into a staff harder than diamond. However, he was said to be a trickster in combat because he could make his staff shorten or extend on a moment's notice. Konoha tried to develop a weapon that followed similar principle, but the idea ended in failure because it wasn't quick enough. Naruto pressed the tiny indent on the pipe, and it rapidly expanded into 6-foot-long staff. So the idea got scrapped, and is what happens with a bunch of random scrapped ideas. They find themselves in the ANBU weapons locker or the Konoha Science Division to see if anyone can find some actual use for them. Now, while this weapon wasn't practical in high-speed shinobi battles, they updated the weapon a bit to shift briefly between staff and spear, he said as another shift of the pipe forged almost an arrowhead on one end of the long piece of metal. It wasn't really useful for shinobi because of the speed of combat, but for these zombies walking around that aren't too quick, I imagine it will work fine. Naruto finished his brief little weapons history weapon. You can close the weapon and make it retract by holding down this button, and twisting both halves of the weapon 90 degrees in opposite directions. Naruto then proceeded to demonstrate before he offered the weapon over to Rei. Rei was genuinely surprised at the gift. Naruto, I thank you. She frowned a bit, not entirely good with accepting spontaneous gifts, particularly when she had nothing in return to give. Naruto had helped her above and beyond what was really necessary for him to. The earlier moment they shared in the bathroom was quite evidence of that. Truthfully, he could have just left her with that thug. She owed him her life. The Uzumaki gave a soft smile, seemingly coming off of his emotional high from the moment the two of them shared earlier during the shower. Come on, we should get going. I honestly would have liked to stay the night here. However, everyone on the bus doesn't seem to be stopping, he said as he looked off distantly into the corner of the room. Wait a minute? How do you know where they are? Rei asked in a level of shock and surprise, which was a bit silly for Naruto considering only rather cool and collected people wore the uniform she was wearing. Dressed like a ninja. Not a ninja. Naruto teased, light wagging his eyebrows to further emphasize it as he made his way out of the room. Rei didn't bother to hold back a few giggles that were let out from Naruto's comment. Not to mention how out of character she felt his teasing tone was given how she originally pictured the boy know the man before her. Come on, seriously, how do you know where they are? Her voice now quiet and serious. Back to the voice of a person that had been surviving the entire day and night against rabid killers, human and undead. It has something to do with chakra, I'll explain it later. In short, all ninjas have it. So practically all ninjas can sense it. However, here in this world, no one really has chakra. Ain, however, does have actually quite a respectable amount of latent chakra for some reason. So I can sense Ain because she has the equivalent to 1,000 neon signs pointed at her in a sea of darkness whenever I try and sense chakra. Naruto moved to then slide open the glass door, stepping out onto the balcony. Get on my back. Naruto said, all business as her took a knee on the ground. Rei followed Naruto outside only to nearly want to jump back inside. Why are we on the top story of the building? She asked in a loud voice, quickly covering her hand afterwards. Did you carry me all the way up here? She asked disbelievingly as she looked over to the door, barricade still firmly in place. Naruto gave a weak grin, something like that, but I doubt it's what you think. Here, get on my back. Rei gave a sigh. Why do you want me to get on your back? Are we climbing down? Is this place full of zombies or something? She asked as she looped her legs around Naruto's prepared arms. She then gently situated herself on his back and wrapped her arms around his neck. Naruto shrugged as he stood up. Because I need you to, nope, and I don't know. Naruto responded in quick succession. It took a moment for Rei to realize as Naruto crouched down. Suddenly she went bug-eyed. Wait, what do you mean we aren't climbing down? She yelled in a panic just before Naruto leaped from that balcony completely across the street onto the roof of a nearby building. What if Naruto born in Highschool of the Dead? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.